Chapter 834, 800 years later. Chapter 834, 800 years later. After the battle, corpses were strewn everywhere in a devastating sight. However, the demon beasts of Howling Moon Mountain that survived were excited as they collected various trophies of war from the ground. They had won this battle. Initially, Howling Moon Mountain was on the verge of destruction. However, with the arrival of one person, the tides had changed entirely. The demons reared their heads and looked at the figure on the mountain peak of Howling Moon Mountain with reverence in their eyes. There was an indescribable fervor in their gazes. In the world of demons, their belief was that the strong reigned supreme. After this battle, the rise of Howling Moon Mountain was inevitable and no one would be able to stand in its way. The Rat King puffed his chest proudly as he walked through the crowd with an impressive strut. From time to time, lesser demons would close in with pandering expressions and offer him spoils of war. He had the right to be proud indeed. No matter what, he was the one that brought Suzimo here from the ancient battlefield. Among the demons, he was also the first to make acquaintance with Suzimo. That fact alone gave him an unshakable status among the demons. On the mountaintop, Monkey, the spirit tiger, and Ching Ching descended with blood all over their body. Some were theirs and some were from other people. Che, amazing. Monkey smacked his lips and grinned, as though he could not feel any pain on his body at all. There was finally a great battle that could satisfy him after he became a fiend demon. Along with the spirit tiger and Ching Ching, the three of them hunted down fiend demons of Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave for dozens of kilometers and had only just returned. Although Little Fox had already adapted to life in the jungle, she did not like to kill. She did not chase after the demon beasts of the two territories that fled and returned to Suzimo's side a long time ago. Go and rest to recuperate first. Suzimo smiled. There might be more battles in time to come. He was already prepared to head to Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave and claim the territories under his command. Be it territorial lords or overlords, it would naturally be better for them if they occupied more territory. The greater their territory, the more the demon beasts under their command. This also meant that they would gain access to even more resources such as natural minerals, materials, spirit herbs and treasures. Territorial Lord, thank you for protecting Howling Moon Mountain. Black Wolf bowed deeply towards Suzimo. Without Suzimo, the outcome of the battle today would have been starkly different. Howling Moon Mountain would have ceased to exist, divided by Black Sand Ridge, Cyclone Cave and Ghastly River. But now, not only has Ghastly River submitted, the territory of Howling Moon Mountain has expanded by more than twice. At that thought, Black Wolf turned to look at Solitary Cloud instinctively. It was understandable why the territorial lords of Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave were defeated. It was because they were weak. Among them, the territorial lord of Ghastly River behaved the strangest. The other two territorial lords bore a semblance of hope and turned to flee. However, this guy chose to submit right away. At that moment, Solitary Cloud said, Territorial Lord, you seem to always be alone. Don't you have a mount yet? No. Suzimo shook his head without thinking too much. That's good. Solitary Cloud was delighted and hurriedly said, Territorial Lord, let me be your mount. Black Wolf and Chanrui were both pondering about why Solitary Cloud would submit and whether the latter possessed any devious intentions. However, their jaws nearly fell to the ground when they heard that. This was not just a mere submission. He was almost sprawled onto the ground completely. Where in the world would there be a demon beast that would offer to be a mount for someone else? It might be understandable if they were facing a supreme expert or some overlord, but this was a low-level fiend demon right before them. It's fine. Suzimo waved it off. You are the deputy territorial lord of Howling Moon Mountain. It will lower your status significantly if you become my mount. It's fine, it's fine. Solitary Cloud waved it off as well. I won't be a deputy territorial lord then. I'll just be your mount. Both Black Wolf and Chanrui were stunned. Solitary Cloud was the most prideful loner in the region. As a pure-blooded ferocious beast, he was indeed qualified to have that attitude. However, what was happening here? Wasn't the difference in his attitude before and after way too great? Could he have some immense benefit to gain by being the mount of the territorial lord? It was a fleeting thought and neither of them thought too much about it. In truth, there was indeed an immense benefit for Solitary Cloud to be Suzimo's mount. After Solitary Cloud deduced Suzimo's true form, he garnered that he could accompany the latter and cultivate together with him if he became the latter's mount. Even if he could only absorb a trace of aura from the dragon race, it would provide an unimaginable benefit for Solitary Cloud's cultivation. The dragon race. That was the existence that once reigned over the primordial era. In Solitary Cloud's mind, he imagined that as someone from the dragon race, Su Zimo must have come to this random small place to become a territorial lord just to have some fun. Once he had his fill of fun, he would definitely return. If Solitary Cloud could follow Su Zimo along to return to the sacred land of the dragon race, the possibility of his dragonification would be much greater. Su Zimo mulled for a moment and had already guessed Solitary Cloud's thoughts. Are you sure? He gave a faint smile with an odd gaze. Definitely. I won't regret it. Solitary Cloud nodded hurriedly. I'm willing to lay down a blood oath and follow you for life. There's no need. Su Zimo waved it off and interrupted him. If you're willing to do it, we'll follow your intentions. Thank you, Master. Solitary Cloud had already changed his way of addressing Su Zimo. Your status as a deputy territorial lord shall remain unchanged. Head back, recuperate and prepare to attack Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave. Su Zimo said deeply. Understood. Solitary Cloud bowed in response. Su Zimo stood at the top of the mountain with Monkey, the spirit tiger, Little Fox and Ching Ching behind him. His scarlet hair rested on his shoulders as he looked into the distance with a deep gaze and murmured, From this day forth, the 5 of us siblings are going to start ruling over the vast forests. Su Zimo gazed into the north with a hint of sorrow in his eyes. He was far from his homeland and would most likely not be able to return within a short period of time. Ching Ching, hurry, look. I painstakingly dug this beautiful pearl necklace personally from a corpse. It's extremely compatible with you. Get lost. You disgust me. Foo-foo, brother tiger, you sure won't know how to coax a girl, Foxy quipped in a teasing manner. The sorrow in Su Zimo's eyes dissipated when he heard the laughter around him and he gave a suave smile. At the very least, he won't be bored in the future with Monkey, the spirit tiger, Ching Ching and Little Fox around him. A storm was destined to befall Thousand Demon Valley because of the 5 of them. A month later. The army of Howling Moon Mountain was split into 2, led by Su Zimo and Solitary Cloud respectively to conquer Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave. Solitary Cloud fought against the demons of Cyclone Cave for half a day and the latter submitted. Su Zimo descended upon Black Sand Ridge and killed half of the Black Scorpion race, leading to an instant submission by the demons of Black Sand Ridge. Thereafter, in less than half a year, Howling Moon Mountain merged Black Sand Ridge and Cyclone Cave completely and the territory under their command on the maps expanded rapidly. The name of Howling Moon Mountain spread wildly. In the days after, Howling Moon Mountain engaged in a few more conquests against the territories in the vicinity and everything concluded in victory. The territory of Howling Moon Mountain expanded once again. The name of the Mo demon was renowned. Many experts came in reverence of the Mo demon and submitted to his might. As such, the strength of Howling Moon Mountain grew even further. Towards the end, Su Zimo rarely appeared. Solitary Cloud, Black Wolf and the other demons held the fort and that was enough to ensure Howling Moon Mountain's continued development. The sands of time flowed freely. In the blink of an eye, 100 years passed. Chapter 835 Thousand Demon Meet. Chapter 835, Thousand Demon Meet. Howling Moon Mountain's peak. A figure stood in the breeze with his hands behind his back. His robes fluttered, his scarlet hair danced and his eyes were clear with a gaze as deep as the ocean. He had refined features and looked like a scholar in his 20s. Time seemed to have left no mark on his face at all. The only hint of age was through the wistful look in his eyes from time to time. Su Zimo gazed into the distance with a pensive expression. There was an old saying that the road of cultivation was endless and caused one to lose sight of the world. It was at this moment that he resonated with the idea deeply. 100 years was probably an entire lifetime for mortals in the secular realm. However, for nascent souls with lifespans of 1,000 years, it did not mean much at all. Things were still peaceful in Howling Moon Mountain after 100 years. However, nobody knew if anything major happened within the cultivation world or if any paragons or monster incarnates were born. Su Zimo did not know if his old acquaintances were doing well. He had not rested for the past 100 years. Right now, his cultivation realm was at the peak of mid-stage nascent soul realm. This cultivation speed was not considered slow for nascent souls. More importantly, Su Zimo's essence spirits had been nurturing the creation green lotus for the past 100 years. Right now the creation green lotus was at grade 4. A grade 4 creation green lotus was not inferior to a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon in terms of strength. Not only that, Su Zimo spent most of his effort for the past 100 years researching the ancient book left behind by the mighty figure of Tomb Sect. The ancient book recorded many attempts and methods from predecessors on how mortals without spirit roots should attempt to cultivate. Su Hong's death and the plight of the citizens of Yen country had a huge impact on Su Zimo. That was the reason why he laid down a vow that he wanted to establish a Tao and alter the fates of the living beings of the world. His Tao would allow everyone without spirit roots to cultivate so that they can be in control of their own fates. Hai had benefited immensely for the past 100 years. In truth, be it for the immortal, Buddhist, fiend or demon Taos, the formation of a core was the most important barrier. Su Zimo discovered that as long as one broke through from the core formation realm and cultivated an essence spirit, the function of the spirit root was almost negligible. In other words, the spirit root was merely a stepping stone onto the path of cultivation. The more important thing was for people to form golden cores without the existence of a spirit root. Naturally, that was something that could be achieved through demonic cultivation. However, Su Zimo could not let the rest of the world follow in his footsteps where they would be ostracized by the most other human cultivators at the end of their cultivations. Su Zimo researched the ancient book and made many hypotheses along those lines of thought, gaining deep insights in the process. Of course, he had not given up on the dermic arts of the Een Spirit, Purple Thunder Manual and Great Day Rulai Sutra. He cultivated and comprehended them constantly as well. Right then, a blood-colored light column surged in the distant horizon. It pierced into the clouds and vanished soon after. The blood-light column was extremely far from Howling Moon Mountain and its exact location was unknown. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly as he gazed at the dissipated blood light. A familiar sensation surfaced in his mind for a brief moment. Solitary cloud. Su Zimo called softly. In the darkness not far behind him, a figure darted out. It was the original Territorial Lord of Ghastly River and Su Zimo's current mount. Solitary Cloud. Solitary Cloud was still a mid-level fiend demon 100 years later. However, his aura was purer and his gaze seemed much sharper. It was clear that he had advanced greatly in his cultivation. Whenever Su Zimo cultivated throughout the years, Solitary Cloud watched by the sides. Each time Su Zimo cultivated the Een Spirit section of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness, he would exude some aura of the dragon race that provided immense benefits for Solitary Cloud. Su Zimo asked, "Do you know what that heavenly piercing blood column earlier was?" "It's most likely from the 1,000-year blood sea." Solitary Cloud replied. 1,000-year blood sea? Su Zimo murmured softly. Solitary Cloud explained, "The 1,000-year blood sea is a lake in the center of the 1,000-demon valley. The reason why it's called a sea is because it has a large surface area and its edges can't be seen with a single gaze. Furthermore, this sea is extremely strange. The color of the sea turns darker as time passes by. At 1,000 years, it will reach its peak and the sea will be as bright red as blood." Su Zimo asked again, "What do people know about the 1,000-year blood sea?" Solitary Cloud continued, "It's said that the blood sea gathers the essence, blood and souls of demon beasts that have fallen for the past 1,000 years. If any fiend demon can cultivate within, they would grow at an astonishing speed." "Ha!" Su Zimo raised his brow and asked, "If that's the case, wouldn't the blood sea be a precious place where fights and massacres happen at every moment since everyone is vying for it?" "That was indeed the case initially." Solitary Cloud nodded. "However, later on, the battles got too miserable and escalated. In fact, even high-level territorial lords fell one after another. Because of that, the 7 great overlords of Thousand Demon Valley decided to put an end to the war and had everyone share the 1,000-year blood sea. The blood sea opens up once every 1,000 years and there's a total of 10 spots. The 7 overlords will each send territorial lords under their rule to fight for the 10 positions." Su Zimo could not help but ask at that point, since the 1,000-year blood sea is so amazing, why don't high-level fiend demons head there to cultivate? There's a limit to the power within the blood sea. The boost for high-level fiend demons cultivating there is not significant. For low-level fiend demons, their essence spirits and physical bodies are unable to withstand the power of the blood sea. Therefore, mid-level fiend demons are naturally the most suitable to cultivate there. Solitary Cloud mulled for a moment. "Of course, given your strength, there should be no issue if you enter the blood sea and cultivate within." Su Zimo nodded. The soul-nourishing blood ginseng and other spirit refinement consumables he had obtained in the ancient battlefield had long been used up in the past 100 years. Even the grade of the creation green lotus was now at a bottleneck due to Su Zimo's cultivation realm. Even if he entered seclusion and cultivated for hundreds or 1,000 years, there might not be any progress for his bottleneck. At times like this, a cultivator had to venture out into the world. The breakthrough can come in the form of an opportunity or a great battle. Perhaps one might even be inspired at a foreign place and achieve a sudden breakthrough as well. Through Solitary Cloud's words, the opportunity to cultivate at the 1,000-year blood sea was a rare one that must not be missed. However, there were extremely few positions available and there would definitely be a vicious battle involved if Su Zimo wanted to obtain one. He asked again, "How should I obtain a position to cultivate in the blood sea?" "The 1,000 demon meet." Solitary Cloud replied, "A month later, 1,000 demon meet will be hosted in the vicinity of the 1,000-year blood sea. At that time, the overlords of 1,000 Demon Valley and many territorial lords will arrive. It's a grand occasion for the demon race." He pondered for a moment and explained, "Lord Mo, if you wish to take part in it, we've got to pay a visit to the overlord in charge of Howling Moon Mountain first." Overlords were above territorial lords. There were 7 overlords in 1,000 Demon Valley. Beneath each overlord was countless territorial lords. Even Solitary Cloud had not met the overlord in charge of Howling Moon Mountain. It was said that the overlord was a demon ape and resided in Ape Chatter Ridge. "Alright, we'll head to Ape Chatter Ridge 3 days later." Su Zimo did not hesitate since he had already decided and laid down the orders immediately. Chapter 836, 10 Great Territorial Lords. Chapter 836, 10 Great Territorial Lords. Su Zimo did not take many people with him for the trip. Apart from Monkey and the other 3, there was Solitary Cloud and the Rat King. Black Wolf and Chan Rui stayed behind at Howling Moon Mountain to guard over the territory in case other territories tried to seize the opportunity and invade. Solitary Cloud reverted to his true form of a WRM and Su Zimo along with everyone else rode on his back. Because Solitary Cloud was a pure-blooded ferocious beast and a mid-level fiend demon, there were few demon beasts that were foolish enough to rush at them along the way. The group of them crossed mountains and ridges through dozens of territories for many days. After close to half a month, they finally arrived at the vicinity of Ape Chatter Ridge. Before them was a majestic forest. The reason why it was referred to as majestic was because every single ancient tree in the forest before them had existed for a long time. All of them towered into the skies with luscious branches and leaves. They had thick trunks that resembled heavenly piercing pillars and vines coiled around their surfaces like gigantic anacondas. The size of everyone in Su Zimo's group could not even be compared to the thickness of the roots of the ancient trees. There were only slivers of light within the entire forest and the place seemed eerie. Solitary Cloud reverted to his human form and everyone descended. None of them could conceal the shock in their eyes as they gazed at the forest. Unknowingly, all of them felt an indescribable pressure. Su Zimo asked, "Solitary Cloud, how much do you know about the Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge?" "There are 7 overlords in 1,000 Demon Valley. It's said that this demon ape has held his position for the longest time, possibly more than 5,000 years. Solitary Cloud replied. He had reigned for 5,000 years. Su Zimo's expression turned grim. Overlords were not only high-level fiend demons, but also the strongest existences among high-level fiend demons. Only those with strength superior to their peers could reign over a place. Su Zimo felt uneasy visiting the Overlord out of the blue without knowing anything about the latter. After all, he was at the peak of mid-stage nascent soul realm right now. If he released his trump cards fully, there's a chance for him to fight against mid-level fiend demons that were a major cultivation realm above him. However, against high-level fiend demons, or even the Overlord who was the strongest among the high-level fiend demons, Su Zimo definitely stood no chance at all. During the fight at Ethereal Peak, the old immortal crane broke through her bottleneck and transformed into a high-level fiend demon. At that time, the Azura told Su Zimo that upon becoming high-level fiend demons, demon beasts would awaken their innate divine powers. Spirit energy could not match dermic powers. Dermic powers could not match divine powers. It was an absolute suppression of a different level. Su Zimo gazed at the dark forest before him and said deeply with a bright gaze, "Everyone, our future is uncertain with this trip here to Ape Chatter Ridge. Keep a low profile and don't behave recklessly." It was rare for Su Zimo to instruct everyone as such. Back in Howling Moon Mountain, everyone could behave without restraints. However, this was the Ape Chatter Ridge. The owner of this territory was a high-level fiend demon. Furthermore, there was definitely more than one high-level fiend demon here. Apart from Solitary Cloud, most of them were only low-level fiend demons. The difference was two major cultivation realms. If a fight broke out, they could be killed as easily as ants. For sure, for sure. The Rat King nodded hurriedly. His expression was already pale from shock before he entered Ape Chatter Ridge. His purpose of heading here originally was to expand his horizons and experience the Thousand Demon Meet. But now, before the Thousand Demon Meet even began, he was already feeling regrets when they had to visit an Overlord. The Spirit Tiger extended his finger and prodded Monkey in a teasing manner. Brother Monkey first is referring to you. Don't be reckless. Get lost. Monkey slapped away the Spirit Tiger's palm. Even so, he knew that he was indeed the most reckless in their group. Apart from the fact that he knew nothing about Ape Chatter Ridge, the reason why Su Zimo was so cautious was because he had a faint feeling. It was like intuition. He had a feeling that something major was about to happen in Ape Chatter Ridge. Fufu, why are low-level fiend demons from some unknown territory having fun here? Suddenly, a chuckle came not far away. Everyone frowned and turned over. A black wind blew past. After it dissipated, more than 100 fiend demons appeared. All of them had powerful auras and shuddering gazes. These were all mid-level fiend demons. The leader had a scrawny face with thin lips and a long, crooked nose that resembled an eagle. His gaze was extremely sharp, filled with utter disdain. Monkey gripped his fists and a hint of scarlet flashed through the depths of his eyes as he glared at this person. The Spirit Tiger and everyone else lamented internally. Trouble came knocking on the door before they even entered Ape Chatter Ridge. The other party had a lot more in numbers and all of them were powerful mid-level fiend demons. If a fight broke out, their chance of victory was slim. Furthermore, it was truly inconvenient to have a conflict without knowing the background of the other party. The Spirit Tiger and everyone else turned to look at Monkey, afraid that he might start a fight in a moment of rage and ignite a conflict. Monkey took a deep breath and closed his eyes gradually, swallowing his pride. Given his usual personality, he would have charged forward against the other party's provocations right away, unable to endure it. It did not matter how many people were on the other end or what cultivation realms they were, everything could wait until he fought them to the end. Su Zimo lowered his eyes without saying anything. Sir, the group of puny demons are so frightened that they can't say anything. Sir, you're amazing. Hurry, take a look at that rat demon. His face is ashen and his legs are shivering. That sure is a cowardly rat, ha. The group of demons burst into laughter. Suddenly, Monkey opened his eyes and bared his teeth slightly with a menacing gaze. Right as he was about to speak, the Rat King at the side darted forward in front of Monkey. I am truly way too cowardly, ha. I made a joke of myself to you great sirs. The Rat King had a look of inferiority and smiled in a pandering manner. Scram. Don't let us see you again. The eagle-nosed man in the lead waved it off idly with a look of disgust as he sneered, I'm even afraid of dirtying my hands killing puny demons like you guys. Why yes, you're right, sir. The Rat King bowed with a smile. Let's go. The eagle-nosed man beckoned and the group of demons roared in laughter as they entered Ape Chatter Ridge. That seems to be Ing Li, one of the 10 great territorial lords. That's right. Apart from him, nobody will dare to be so cocky in Ape Chatter Ridge. I heard that Ing Li has a bloodline connection to a great protector of Ape Chatter Ridge. Even without the protector, Ing Li's strength is evident. He's most likely among the top 3 of the 10 great territorial lords and probably on the way to advance to a high-level fiend demon. Su Zimo had a calm expression as he listened to the discussions of demon beasts nearby. The Spirit Tiger, Solitary Cloud and the others were secretly alarmed with a lingering sense of trepidation. Monkey frowned as well. The protectors of Ape Chatter Ridge were starkly different from the protectors of Howling Moon Mountain. Without mistake, the protectors of Ape Chatter Ridge should be high-level fiend demons. To think that we would casually bump into a fiend demon with such a powerful background, Ching Ching sighed. Little Fox asked curiously, who are the 10 great territorial lords they are referring to? There are several hundred territories under Ape Chatter Ridge and Howling Moon Mountain is only one of them. Solitary Cloud explained, among the several hundred territorial lords, The strongest 10 are referred to as the 10 Great Territorial Lords. This man has already threatened us to head back. If we advance recklessly and bump into them again, I'm afraid. The Rat King had a nervous expression but did not continue speaking. No worries. Su Zimo waved it off and said nonchalantly, "Follow me in." With that said, he led the group into Ape Chatter Ridge. Chapter 837, Arrival of the Overlord. Chapter 837, Arrival of the Overlord. There were more demon beasts after they entered Ape Chatter Ridge, and everyone headed towards a certain direction. There were many forked roads in the forest and visibility was dim. Although there was no one leading the way, Su Zimo's group did not get lost following the group of demons in front of them. Why are there some low-level fiend demons all of a sudden? Are they here to die? These fiend demons seem to be from Howling Moon Mountain or whatnot. I heard that is the latest territory to rise and their territorial lord is a low-level fiend demon. Ah! Even a monkey can rule over a mountain without a tiger. Not far away, fiend demons made fun of Su Zimo's group and roared in laughter. Are they blind? Who says that there's no tiger? I'm right here. The spirit tiger grumbled softly. The Rat King gave a gentle cough and consoled, at the very least, Howling Moon Mountain has made a small name for itself. The group of them continued forward. 2 hours later, the clamor at the front grew clearer. There were people all around and rich demonic chi that surged into the air, almost enveloping the entire forest. Everyone was spirited and hastened with their footsteps. Not long after, they exited the forest and their vision expanded. A massive flatland appeared within the forest with many fiend demons gathered. Although all of them were in human form, they exuded rumbling demonic chi and it was unusually lively. A high platform was raised at the front where there were countless roundwood and vines. In the center was a spacious chair draped with a golden tiger skin. Without mistake, that should be the seat of Ape Chatter Ridge's Overlord. Su Zimo swept his gaze and caught sight of Ing Li's group before long. Ing Li's group stood at the front of the raised platform and was chatting with the fiend demons behind him in high spirits. Apart from Ing Li, 9 other fiend demons stood at the front. Their auras were strong and outsiders did not dare to approach them. Without mistake, the 10 of them should be the 10 Great Territorial Lords. They were probably the only ones qualified to be the closest to the raised platform. The spirit tiger was indignant and mumbled, "If we had known earlier, we should have brought more men here to strengthen our presence." With a single gaze, it could be seen that almost 100 territorial lords were here. Every single territorial lord had at least 100 men with them. Some of the territorial lords even rallied close to 1,000 men and exuded grandeur. Su Zimo's group did seem much more pathetic in comparison. Not only were the majority of them low-level fiend demons, there were even less than 10 of them. Su Zimo did not squeeze his way forward and stood right at the back of the group of demons. In any case, he could see everything on the raised platform clearly given the prowess of his vision. We can see the Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge soon. The thought of it is making me excited. The Rat King rubbed his palms together and said softly as sweat surfaced on the tip of his nose. Under normal circumstances, given his experience, there was no way he could have the opportunity to meet the Overlord unless he cultivated to the realm of a high-level fiend demon. Even if he only managed to catch a mere glimpse of the Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge for his trip here, it would be enough bragging rights upon his return to Howling Moon Mountain. If he could take part in the 1,000 Demon Meet and see the 7 Overlords of 1,000 Demon Valley, that would be incredible. The Rat King was lost in his imagination when Su Zimo's voice suddenly sounded. "Here he comes." "Huh? Where?" The Rat King had a lost expression and looked over but could not see anyone. The other fiend demons laughed and conversed as though they had not noticed anything. All of a sudden, the expression of the leader of the 10 Great Territorial Lords changed and he looked into the forest beside him, as though he sensed something. Not long after, 6 figures exited the forest. The leader was an old ape with grayish-white fur. His face was filled with wrinkles, his eyes were hazy and he walked extremely slowly. In fact, he looked like he was hobbling. The clamor of the demons gradually quietened down. The 10 Great Territorial Lords had various expressions. Some of them sighed. Others shook their heads. Some of them had mocking looks in their eyes. For most of the fiend demons, they were stunned. Even Su Zimo's mouth was slightly agape and he had a surprised look on his face. This old ape was the legendary Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge. This old ape did not possess the dominating might of an overlord and merely looked old and lethargic, as though he was in his twilight years. This old ape did not even seem like he was able to move smoothly. Despite his unwillingness to accept the fact, Suzimo was clear in his heart that this old ape was the overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge. That was because the auras of the 5 figures behind him were simply way too powerful. They were high-level fiend demons. Only high-level fiend demons could exude that sort of overwhelming aura to suppress the entire crowd. It was said that the overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge had 5 protectors. Without mistake, the 5 of them should be the old ape's protectors. It was beyond everybody's expectations. There wasn't any WRM mount, green lawn or any grand entrance. This overlord came forth from the forest in an ordinary manner just like that. Step after step, he slowly ascended the raised platform. When he sat on his seat, he let out a long breath as though the walk took a huge toll on his stamina. Heis. At the side, Monkey suddenly sighed and said softly, "He looks rather pitiful." Perhaps because they were from the same race, Monkey felt a rare moment of emotion towards this old ape. Although this was an overlord, he could not fight against the sands of time and had to struggle with old age as well. This hero was past his prime. Who in this world could escape death? His past glory and achievements would eventually disappear, drowned in the surging rivers of time. The 5 protectors followed the old ape and ascended the raised platform indifferently. Among them, 2 protectors had odd expressions that vanished fleetingly, seemingly mocking and excited. Suzimo furrowed his brows slightly. Right then something crossed Suzimo's mind. He had a feeling as though he was being watched by someone. Suzimo turned around instinctively. On the raised platform, the old ape leaned on his chair as he gazed towards this direction with hazy eyes, looking absolutely emotionless. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. The Mingwang prayer beads could not evade the old ape's detection. Thankfully, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit took the main seat within his spirit consciousness and exuded a rumbling demonic chi, so he did not have to worry about being exposed. Demons surrounded the depths of Thousand Demon Valley. If his identity as a human was exposed, he would be shredded into pieces by the demons instantly. The old ape glared at Suzimo for a while before shifting his gaze onto Monkey. He glared at Monkey for an even longer duration. A moment later, the old ape retracted his gaze and the wrinkles on his face seemed to have deepened. "Which territory are you from?" Suddenly the old ape asked. All the demons were surprised and looked around, not knowing who the old ape was speaking to. Although the old ape no longer looked in his direction, Suzimo knew that the old ape was speaking to them. He raised his voice and replied, "Howling Moon Mountain." The moment he said that, countless gazes landed on him. Even the 10 territorial lords at the front turned around and gazed at the back. The moment Ingli saw that it was Suzimo's group, he frowned and his expression darkened. "Isn't that the group of low-level fiend demons? How dare they ignore our territorial lord's words and continue here? They truly don't know what's good for them." A fiend demon said softly. Chapter 838, Overlord, you've grown old. Chapter 838, Overlord, you've grown old. Oh. The old ape let out a deep breath and raised his chin slightly. Howling Moon Mountain, I've heard of it before. That's the fastest rising territory for the past 100 years. The Rat King and everyone else was spirited, feeling as though they were honored. Suzimo had a calm expression. He could not figure out the old ape's intentions still. "Come over and let me have a look." The old ape's cloudy gaze was fixed on Suzimo's group as he raised his hand and beckoned weakly. Monkey turned to Suzimo questioningly. The old ape gave off a mysterious feeling and Monkey felt his hair stand on end when he was swept by the former's gaze. He was asking Suzimo internally if there was anything wrong with the situation and whether they should kill their way out. Right now they were standing at the back of all the demons, they might stand a chance if they turned to flee. Suzimo shook his head gently. Who could escape right in front of an overlord? Although this overlord was old, he had 5 protectors behind him. Suzimo took a deep breath and led the way through the other demons. There were many fiend demons in the surroundings that scrutinized Suzimo's group with vicious and evil gazes. Some of the fiend demons extended their grisly red tongues or bared their fangs and claws, hoping to embarrass Suzimo's group into making a fool of themselves. Although it was a short several hundred meters, the Rat King was scared out of his wits and was already drenched with sweat. Even Solitary Cloud felt uneasy and his breathing became hurried, let alone the Rat King. If somebody gave an order for the group of demons to swarm them, they would be shredded into pieces instantly. Among the group, Su Zimo was the only one with an indifferent expression and advanced nonchalantly. There was a hint of admiration in the old ape's eyes. This man's boldness was unmatched by everyone around him. An odd sensation rose in Su Zimo's heart. There were two reasons why the old ape asked them to advance. First, he wanted to check out Su Zimo's background. Second, he was interested in Monkey. Before long, Su Zimo's group arrived at the raised platform and stood shoulder to shoulder with the 10 great territorial lords. Ingli stood right beside him. Su Zimo could clearly sense the vicious gazes coming from the side. Ingli was not the only one. The fiend demons behind him revealed killing intent as well. The old ape glared at Su Zimo a while longer and asked, "You are the territorial lord of Howling Moon Mountain?" "Yes," Su Zimo replied. The old ape smiled. "You must be quite capable to become a territorial lord as a low-level fiend demon. Very well, you have a bright future ahead of you." "You're being too kind, senior." Although he was facing an overlord, Su Zimo's attitude was neither servile nor overbearing the entire time. However, Su Zimo regretted his reply immediately after. The word, senior, was common in the cultivation world. However, almost no demon would use that term in the world of demons. The sudden mention of the word did seem rather striking. Su Zimo shifted his gaze and it was obvious that the old ape was frowning slightly. The demons around might not think much about a small issue as such. However, there was a high chance that the old ape would turn suspicious. He had lived for a long time and was no fool, having experienced countless schemes and storms. Although Su Zimo was silent, he was reminding himself internally. This was not Howling Moon Mountain and he had to be careful in the future. "So, it's you bunch of ants?" Right then, a sneer sounded beside him. Ingli turned around with a cold gaze and said frostily, "I remembered warning you guys outside Ape Chatter Ridge earlier on not to let me see you again. Yet here you are. I guess you guys really wish to die, huh?" "Insolent." A protector behind the old ape stood out and hollered. The burly man had a pale face without any beard. However, his body was mighty and his eyes were round like bells. With a resounding voice, his holler was filled with overwhelming might. The pale-faced burly man glared at Ingli coldly and said, "Do you think you're in a position to speak when the Overlord is speaking? Back down." The demons present were all silent when the Overlord was conversing with someone. Even the protectors present could not interrupt casually, let alone a mid-level fiend demon like Ingli. Ingli was so frightened that he shirked his neck immediately after he was berated by the pale-faced burly man. After all, this was a high-level fiend demon that could squash him to death with a single finger. However, Ingli glanced behind the old ape and suddenly puffed his chest in a spirited manner, asking loudly, "As one of the 10 great territorial lords, why can't I speak? This bunch of ants are merely low-level fiend demons. They truly have a death wish coming here to join the crowd." A commotion broke out among the demons present. Earlier on, the old ape praised Su Zimo's group. Ingli's sudden remark meant that he was belittling the Overlord completely. The old ape seemed to be ignorant towards the fight and slumped deeply into his chair with a lowered head. It was as though he had fallen asleep. The pale-faced burly man's expression darkened. He glared at a protector not far away before turning back and saying coldly, "Ingli, you sure are bold. Who gave you the guts to ignore our Overlord and go against me?" It was long rumored that Ingli was blood related to one of the protectors of Ape Chatter Ridge. By the look of things, that rumor should be true. The pale-faced burly man's words were clearly targeted at a protector beside him. The protector lowered his gaze like an old monk in meditation and was motionless, as though he could not hear the pale-faced burly man's accusations. The pale-faced burly man was even more furious and stomped with his feet. The raised platform shook and dust flew everywhere as he glared at Ingli and hollered coldly, "You seem like the one with a death wish." An overwhelming might surged forward instantly. The threat of a high-level fiend demon was not something that Ingli could withstand. Blood drained from his face and he almost knelt on the ground. "Linger, that's too serious." Right then, another protector stood out. He waved his robes and easily purged away the pressure that the pale-faced burly man exerted on Ingli. "Protector 4, what's the meaning of this?" The pale-faced burly man frowned and questioned the protector beside him. "The reason why Ingli is so brazen is because someone is backing him up. The Overlord will be disgraced if I don't punish him." "What are you getting anxious for when our Overlord hasn't said anything?" Another protector remarked indifferently. "Fufu, Someone must be used to his overbearing ways because his grandpa is the Overlord. That must be why he does not even allow others to speak, another protector said with a strange tone. Protectors 2 and 3, you guys? The pale-faced burly man glared at the few protectors around him in disbelief and trembled with rage. At that point, Suzimo was enlightened. The pale-faced burly man was the old ape's grandson and had a direct blood relation with the latter. However, by the look of things, this was far from a mere issue of the Overlord's pride. It seemed like something worse was about to happen to Ape Chatter Ridge. The pale-faced burly man sensed that something was amiss as well and glared at the 4 protectors around him fiercely, questioning in a stern manner, "What are you guys up to today?" Right then, the protector that said nothing right from the beginning suddenly opened his eyes and a cold glint flashed. He approached the old ape's side and patted the latter on the shoulder gently, sighing, "Overlord, you've grown old." Chapter 839, Decisive to Kill. Chapter 839, Decisive to Kill. You've grown old. Although it was 3 simple words, the demons present felt a chilling intent. In other words, he meant that it was time for the old ape to give up his position. The protector's palm landed on the old ape's shoulder. The old ape was motionless as though he sensed nothing. The protector was even more composed upon seeing the old ape's reaction and smiled gently. 5,000 years? You've truly been in this position for way too long. All the demons were in an uproar. Suzimo swept his gaze across. Half of the 10 great territorial lords had calm expressions, as though they knew about this earlier on. Ingli was one of them. Although the other half were surprised, they shook their heads in silence. They did not have the strength to interfere in a fight for the Overlord's position. Finally, Suzimo's gaze landed on the old ape. The old ape's long white brows were slumped at his mouth motionlessly. It was as though he was completely emotionless. Suzimo frowned slightly. The old ape was so calm that it was beguiling. Even if he had given up completely, he should not be this calm. The expression of the pale-faced burly man turned extremely terrible. He pulled the old ape's chair behind him and barked coldly, "Follow the rules if you want to fight for the position of the Overlord. Challenge the Overlord in a one-on-one fight. If you win, his position is naturally yours. How weak are you to have to bully with numbers?" The protector chuckled. "Your grandpa is old, but I am a little afraid to fight him to the death. After all, I'm the future Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge. How can I fight to the death with someone that's about to die?" "Coward." The pale-faced burly man sneered. "You want to be the future Overlord of Ape Chatter Ridge when you're so cowardly? How many territorial lords will be willing to follow you?" The protector laughed coldly. "Do you think they're going to follow that old fogey behind you instead of me? Why don't you ask him how long more he has to live? A year? 10? The pale-faced burly man went silent. All these years he watched personally and helplessly as the old ape aged bit by bit. The pale-faced burly man turned back to the old ape and sighed in his heart before saying, "It's your victory. We don't want this position of the Overlord anymore." With that said, the pale-faced burly man carried the chair and wanted to leave the place with the old ape. "Hold on." Protector 2 blocked the pale-faced burly man's path in a flash and asked indifferently, "Who gave you permission to leave? What are you doing?" The pale-faced burly man glared furiously. "Your grandpa has been the Overlord for so many years and has countless treasures in his possession. Is he going to take them with him to the grave?" Protector 3 smiled gently. "Don't get overboard." The pale-faced burly man's arms shivered and steam puffed from his nose. "Overboard?" Protector 4 said sinisterly, "It's impossible for the 2 of you to leave this place alive today. You cultivated to become a high-level fiend demon at such a young age. There's no guarantee that you won't be a threat in the future if we let you off today." Right then, the old ape suddenly opened his eyes and glared at Protector 1 expressionlessly. "You're bent on killing us." "That's right, I'm bent." The Protector no longer concealed his killing intent. He had waited for this day for far too long. When the old ape was young and strong, he had no chance of victory. Later on, the old ape aged, but yet, he did not give up on his position. Not only that, the pale-faced burly man was extremely talented, even more so than the old ape. At a young age, he cultivated to become a high-level fiend demon and became one of the protectors. Given the circumstances, the pale-faced burly man would definitely become the next Overlord. However, Protector 1 would never get the chance to ascend to the seat of the Overlord. He was indignant. He wanted to kill the Overlord and the pale-faced burly man while the former was in his twilight years and the latter had yet to grow further. Ape Chatter Ridge was going to be theirs. The pale-faced burly man panted heavily and long fur grew on his body layer after layer. He grit his teeth and looked as though he was about to revert to his true form as he snarled, "All the demons can see what you're doing. How can anybody be willing to acknowledge you given your despicable methods?" Ha 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 ha. Protector 1 reared his head in shrill laughter. A moment later the laughter came to a sudden stop. With a cold expression, Protector 1 gazed around with a tremendous might that enveloped the demons present as he asked with a murderous aura, "Who is unconvinced of my strength?" All the demons lowered their heads. None of them dared to match Protector 1's gaze. Among the 10 great territorial lords, Ingli led 4 others to stand forth. All of them knelt on the ground with one knee and cupped their fists. "We're willing to submit to you." The fiend demons behind the territorial lords naturally knelt down as well. The demons present knelt down one after another when they saw that, yelling, "We're willing to submit." The remaining 5 of the 10 great territorial lords exchanged glances and sighed in silence. Given the pressing circumstances, the 5 of them could only kneel. "I'm unconvinced." Right then a voice sounded. It was distinct compared to the submissive tone of everyone else and was particularly striking. All the demons turned towards the voice. Even Protector 1's expression changed as he spun around. Most of the demons had already knelt onto the ground and there were not many that remained standing. Su Zimo's group was part of the latter. Monkey shouted furiously, "It's a serious matter if someone wishes to fight for the seat of the Overlord. According to the rules, all you have to do is challenge the Overlord. The Overlord is already in his twilight years but you don't even have the courage to do that. Yet you wish to take over his position? Perhaps it was because he felt pity for the old ape in his twilight years. Perhaps it was because they were from the same race, but Monkey could not take it a long time ago. He pointed at Protector 1 and yelled, "Furthermore, they've already given up on the position of the Overlord and yet you're still bent on killing them? Although I love to fight, I would definitely not bully the old and the weak. I'm not shameless enough to do that." The Spirit Tiger and the others felt cathartic when they heard that. However, they also knew that Monkey had caused huge trouble with that. He was accusing a high-level fiend demon. Furthermore, this was an existence that was about to become an Overlord. Su Zimo said nothing. Since Monkey had already made a decision, he would definitely be on Monkey's side unconditionally. "You have a death wish." The Protector's expression turned steely and he was enraged. Ingli, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly leaped up and glared at Monkey viciously. "Uncle, there's no need to get angry. Leave those ants to me." "You're unconvinced." Ingli strode over slowly and sneered as though he had heard the greatest joke in the world. "What rights does a low-level fiend demon like you have?" Swash. Suddenly, Ingli's vision blurred and a figure flashed past him. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his head. Immediately after, his consciousness blackened and he never woke up ever again. Thump. Ingli's corpse fell onto the ground. His head was crushed and his essence spirit was destroyed. All the demons were in an uproar. Ingli's head was smashed by a punch before he could finish his sentence. It was the Territorial Lord of Howling Moon Mountain. The demons looked at the green-colored figure in shock as though they had seen a ghost. Given the immensely tense situation where nobody dared to move, the Territorial Lord of Howling Moon Mountain attacked all of a sudden and killed Ingli, who was one of the 10 great Territorial Lords. Even the old ape on the raised platform was momentarily stunned, let alone the demon beasts beneath. Thereafter he gave a nod of acknowledgement. Indeed, Su Zimo was the one that attacked. He was decisive to kill. Since he had already decided on his faction, the way to resolve the issue was through lightning attacks instead of talking needlessly. Furthermore, he had had enough of Ingli a long time ago. Chapter 840 Pretense. Chapter 840, Pretense. Ingli's death was truly unjust. That was the thought that crossed the minds of the demons present. Even Ingli himself would not have expected Su Zimo to make a move and kill him right in front of high-level fiend demons. He was completely unguarded. "How dare you!" A fiend demon closest to Su Zimo hollered with a menacing expression and was about to revert to his true form and charge forward. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo swung his arm in reverse without even turning to look. His arm was like a divine whip, letting out a loud crack as it tore through the air. Although it looked limp and weak, The arm released a frightening killing power when it made contact with the fiend demon's head. The arm coiled and wrapped itself around the head of the fiend demon. Snap. The fiend demon's head had just transformed into a wolf's head when his neck was snapped forcefully by Su Zimo. His entire head was taken off. The wolf head was disfigured and the essence spirit within was crushed instantly. Demon beasts could complete the transformation to their true forms almost instantaneously. However, the two of them were way too close and that single instant was enough for Su Zimo to make the kill. In the blink of an eye, 2 fiend demons had died in Su Zimo's hands. At that moment, all the demons present finally realized, although the Territorial Lord of Howling Moon Mountain was a low-level fiend demon, he was indeed capable. At the very least, his decisiveness to kill was something that not many of the demons present could match. Kill that bunch of ants? Any fiend demon that follows me will be rewarded after today. Protector 1 had a cold gaze and waved to lay down the order. No matter what, the main targets for the 4 of them protectors were the old ape and pale-faced burly man. Roar. Groar. Demonic chi was torrential on the ground as a series of roars echoed. The demons were fervent upon hearing the orders of Protector 1. Don't freeze there, move. Su Zimo nudged Monkey and hollered in a low voice. Monkey reacted instantly and retrieved Imminent from his storage bag. He thumped his chest and stood his ground, knocking back all incoming demons with a single sweep of Imminent. Although Monkey was also a low-level fiend demon, he could fight against ordinary mid-level fiend demons with Imminent in his possession. Solitary Cloud let out a deep roar and reverted to his true form. His long WRM body was lined with scales that shone with a divine light as he soared into the air. The claws beneath his abdomen were sharp and the voids quaked when his tail swayed. It was clear that his combat strength was more frightening than it was 100 years ago. The spirit demon let out a deep growl and transformed into a massive body. He lunged into the crowd and extended his claws, pouncing on a fiend demon at the front. You have a death wish, low-level fiend demon. The fiend demon sneered in contempt and channeled his dermic powers. He created a chilling saber and slashed it at the spirit tiger's head. Clang. 4 incomparably sharp claws protruded from the spirit tiger's paw. They were shiny like white jade and were even sharper. Clang. 2 tiger claws crossed and snapped the saber. Thereafter, the spirit tiger lunged forward and punctured the fiend demon's head with his claws, destroying the latter's essence spirit. The massive body of the fiend demon fell into a blood puddle with a look of grievance on his face. Ching Ching spread her lips gently and summoned her azure green feather fan. She injected the power of her essence spirit into the fan and channeled dermic powers. The fan expanded with the wind and green jade-colored flames ignited on its surface, causing the temperature in the surroundings to rise. Swoosh. Ching Ching fanned in a powerful motion. A ball of jade-green flames burst forward and engulfed 3 fiend demons. The flames were extremely powerful and the 3 fiend demons howled in pain. However, they could not extinguish the flames no matter how they tried. The 3 fiend demons were impressive as well as they made the tough decision of spitting out a huge mouthful of essence blood on their own bodies. Shing. The flames were extinguished instantly and smoke billowed. Ching Ching lamented internally. Unfortunately, they were a major cultivation realm apart. If they were low-level fiend demons, they would not be able to withstand the power of the jade-green flames at all. Even so, the flesh of the 3 fiend demons were split from burns and they looked extremely wretched. There were fiend demons that could not endure it a long time ago and released spirit consciousness attacks at Monkey and the others. Bang. Little Fox released her palm and a pitch-black umbrella opened up. It swiveled slowly and emanated a boundless dark light that blocked all of the incoming spirit consciousness attacks. The pitch-black umbrella was a rare essence spirit dermic weapon. However, the difference in their cultivation realms was too great and Little Fox was already struggling to block a few spirit consciousness attacks. Thankfully, most of the fiend demons were drawn over by Su Zimo alone. Otherwise, if the demons focused their strength and launched attacks on Monkey and the others, they would definitely not be able to last long. Su Zimo barged through the crowd with overwhelming blood chi and no fiend demon could defend against the power of his physique. Furthermore, half of his attention was on the raised platform. Although he was the first to make a move, it did not mean that he had lost his cool. Su Zimo was extremely clear about that. The main battlefield of this internal strife of Ape Chatter Ridge was on the raised platform. Their strength was not enough to decide the tides of the situation. Naturally, everything would be joyous if the old ape's side could win. However, if the old ape and pale-faced burly man fell, they would be next in line. Even he had no shot at victory against high-level fiend demons. That was the reason why Su Zimo was focused on the situation at the raised platform despite the intense slaughtering. If something went wrong, he would take advantage of the chaos and kill his way out with Monkey and the others. On the raised platform, both parties had yet to strike. Originally, Protector 1 was extremely confident. However, for some unknown reason, when he met with the old ape's hazy eyes earlier on, he felt his heart race. The other three protectors looked evidently uneasy as well. Protector 1 did not make a move. Suddenly, he felt frustrated at the chaotic battlefield happening beneath. Why weren't a few low-level fiend demons settled yet? Nothing seemed to be happening smoothly today. Why are you still waiting at this moment? Aren't you going to make a move? Right then the old ape spoke with a calm, emotionless tone. Hee. Protector 1 gave a dry chuckle. I've waited for this moment for such a long time, a little more won't make a difference. Oh. The old ape nodded. If you're not going to make a move, I am. He rose slowly before his sentence was completed. Although it was merely a simple action of rising, he gave off a supremely frightening aura that suppressed all the demons, enveloping the skies of Ape Chatter Ridge instantly. You. Protector 1's eyes were widened as he glared at the old ape in disbelief. Although the old ape was aged, his aura was still sharp and powerful as ever. It seemed no different from when he was at his peak. You were pretending? Protector 1's expression changed as he struggled to utter. The cloudiness of the old ape's eyes had vanished entirely. His blood chi surged and circulated endlessly. The slumped white brows of the old ape moved gently and were already dyed red. It was grisly scarlet. The blood chi was circulated to its limits and had even reached the end of his brows. There was no hint of age from his robust blood chi. Grandpa, you are fine? The pale-faced burly man cheered and was overjoyed. Old fogey, you sure are crafty. You even hid the truth from your kin. Protector 1 had a vengeful gaze as he grit his teeth and snarled. If I didn't do that, how would I have seen through your facade? The old ape thumped his chest and released a deafening roar with a torrential killing intent. Before his roar ended, he took a step forward and struck all of a sudden. Chapter 841 Barren. Chapter 841, Barren. The old ape's attack engulfed the four protectors and his blood chi rose with a tough steeliness. His rough, massive hands seemed like they could blanket the skies as they slammed down. Everyone, we've got no way back. Protector 1 shrieked. If we retreat now, this old fogey will not let us off. We must combine our strength and kill him. Kill? The four protectors moved at the same time and stepped forward to defend. Boom. There was a deafening sound. The raised platform collapsed instantly. The four protectors fell and transformed into gigantic figures during their descent. Among them, Protector 1 was an ancient remnant beast, the green-winged eagle. Innate divine powers. Protector 1 did not test the waters and released his innate divine powers instantly. His massive wings flapped and he transformed into a streak of light, vanishing in front of the old ape right away. He wrapped around the ladder and charged towards the pale-faced burly man. The pale-faced burly man was alarmed. Although he was also one of the protectors, he had advanced into a high-level fiend demon not long ago and was inferior in combat strength to these fiend demons who had cultivated for thousands of years. Roar! The pale-faced burly man stomped his feet and released a ferocious strength from within his body as well. Boom! The pale-faced burly man raised his fist and punched violently towards the incoming streak of light. The force of his strike caused the entire void to cave in. A sneer sounded behind the pale-faced burly man. Not good. The pale-faced burly man's heart sank. The terror of Protector 1's innate divine powers and his speed had grown to such an extent. With a single move, they were now on the brink of life and death. The pale-faced burly man felt a sharp pain behind his head. If he harbored attachments towards his physical body at that moment, there was a chance that both his body and essence spirit would be destroyed together. His only shot at survival was to abandon his physical body and escape with his essence spirit. All of a sudden, the sensation of pain behind his head vanished all of a sudden. Protector 1 shrieked shrilly. Unknowingly, the old ape was already standing beside the pale-faced burly man and knocked Protector 1 back with a single punch. The pale-faced burly man had barely scraped through the gates of death. Old fogey, prepare to die. The other three protectors charged over and released their divine powers one after another as well. You must have a death wish. The old ape's gaze intensified and an incomparably overwhelming power surged forth. His innate divine powers were released. The old ape took a deep breath and his arm expanded as he threw 3 punches in succession, making contact with the 3 protectors at almost the same time. It was 1 against 3. The sound of bones cracking echoed. One of the protector's arms was ruptured by a punch from the old ape and blood spewed everywhere. His entire arm was crippled. The other 2 protectors were stricken as well and the blood chi within their bodies rumbled. Unable to withstand it, both of them spat out a huge mouthful of blood. In that exchange it was clear that the old ape's divine powers surpassed the 3 protectors. Shoo! A streak of light flew over. The old ape extended his palm and grabbed the void directly without even looking. The streak of light stopped. Protector 1's figure was exposed. He opened his mouth and spat out a dark light that expanded along with the wind, transforming into a black spear that shot towards the old ape's face. The 2 of them were extremely close and that attack came without warning. Although the old ape was aged, his reaction was swift and decisive. He released his grip and retreated instantly, grabbing the incoming spear in his palm. Protector 1 seized the opportunity to escape. You're still trying to escape. The old ape's gaze swept across as he thrust the spear in his hand in the direction of Protector 1 violently. Poof! Blood light flashed through the voids. Protector 1 tried his best to dodge but his wings were punctured by his own long spear and countless feathers fell. None of you shall leave today. The old ape chased forward in huge strides. Su Zimo was no longer worried when he saw that. Initially, he had the intention to kill his way out of this place with Monkey and the others if anything went wrong. But now, it was clear that the old ape's combat strength was frightening. He suppressed the internal strife instantly. This was the capability of an overlord. This was the grandeur of an overlord. Within a short dozen of breaths, the 4 protectors were all injured and it seemed like none of them would last long if things carried on. Relieved, Su Zimo's glabella shone and he continued to conjure hand seals. He did not dare to release dermic arts of the immortal or Buddhist Daos with an overlord near him. The dermic art that he released was not from the Purple Thunder Manual or Great Day Rulai Sutra either. Instantly his hand seal was done. With Su Zimo's body as the centrifugal point, sinister dermic powers spread through the surroundings with gray-colored ripples appearing in the void. It rippled in every direction like a wave of water. The Yin Spirit section of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness had no dermic arts, merely a spirit refinement technique. There was a dermic art and an essence spirit secret skill in the Yang Spirit section. According to the records, these 2 secret skills were the most frightening killing moves. Right now what Su Zimo released was the dermic art, Barren. The fiend demons charging over were enveloped by the gray-colored ripples and their movements became immensely sluggish instantly, as though they had fallen into a swamp and could not get out. However, none of the demons felt any discomfort when the gray-colored ripples passed through them. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Barren, the dermic art, did not seem like it possessed any power and could merely restrict the movements and speed of cultivators. To begin with, Su Zimo was at the Yin Spirit realm and he was ahead of himself to cultivate this dermic art. Furthermore, there were many mysterious words in the Yang Spirit section's dermic art and essence spirit secret skill that he could not comprehend. As such, he had yet to grasp the true essence of the 2 secret skills. He believed that this was definitely not Barren's true power. Su Zimo swept his gaze across and his expression changed all of a sudden. The spirit herbs on the ground where the gray-colored ripples blanketed were withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fresh flowers withered instantly. This is... Su Zimo's pupils constricted. Suddenly the fiend demons closest to him shrieked. This is bad. My lifespan is decreasing rapidly. I'm losing 100 years with a single breath. What a frightening speed. I'm losing 60 years with every breath. What is this demonic art? The lifespans of these fiend demons were decreasing by 60 or 100 years with every single breath. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. That was the true power of Barren. Furthermore, the closer he was to them, the more their lifespans would decrease. 4 mid-level fiend demons with several thousand years worth of lifespan, the decrease of 100 years per second was not that significant. However, the deterioration was continuous. Their lifespans would decrease continuously as long as they did not get out of Barren's area of effect. Furthermore, it was irreversible. Even if they managed to escape after losing 100 years of lifespan, their 100 years won't return to them. What a frightening dermic art. Su Zimo felt his own heart racing furiously. His cultivation realm was too low and he did not recognize many of the mysterious words in Barren, nor could he release its true power. If he could understand the obscurities of Barren, how frightening would this dermic art be? 1,000 years with a single breath. If he could reach that level, he could kill a void reversion stealthily within 5 breaths. As Su Zimo pondered, he heard a few yells from the other side of the battlefield. Why is my lifespan decreasing? What are these gray-colored ripples? Instinctively, Su Zimo turned over and could not help but shudder. Unknowingly, the gray-colored ripples had already extended to the raised platform and enveloped the protectors, old ape and pale-faced burly man. Those were high-level fiend demons that were equivalent to Dharma characteristics of the human race. Their lifespans were decreasing as well. The power of Barren was something that even Dharma characteristics could not defend against. Chapter 842 Closer Relationship. Chapter 842 Closer Relationship. The power of Barren was strongest around its center. Its strength decreased along with distance. By the time the gray-colored ripples extended to the old ape and the others, its shaving of one's lifespan was almost negligible. A single breath might only lead to a decrease of a few mere years. However, a dermic art that could reduce one's lifespan that even high-level fiend demons could not defend against was indeed rather frightening. It was especially so for the old ape. Although his combat strength was still present and his blood chi was robust, it was indeed true that he did not have much lifespan remaining. The reduction of lifespan was an extremely sensitive matter for him. He was about to charge forward and kill the 4 protectors when his expression changed all of a sudden. With a single leap, the old ape fled from the radius of the gray-colored ripples. He glared at Su Zimo's side with a conflicted expression and boundless shock within his eyes. He was truly alarmed by that move. As an overlord who had lived for thousands of years, he had witnessed many different situations. Even the betrayal of his 4 protectors did not manage to shock him. However, he was truly startled by this lesser low-level fiend demon before him. If Su Zimo had not stood on his side from the get-go, he would have thought that Su Zimo was sent by the 4 protectors to target him. The dermic art did not pose any fatal threat to high-level fiend demons. However, the fact that it was able to affect high-level fiend demons that were 2 major cultivation realms above and forcibly reduce their lifespans was frightening enough. This was beyond the capability of ordinary dermic arts. Su Zimo was momentarily stunned and snapped out of his stupor when he saw the old ape's gaze. Whoosh! With a single thought from Su Zimo, the gray-colored ripples vanished. The moment he stopped Barren, he felt giddy and waves of fatigue spread through his body. The scarlet-haired Yin spirit had dimmed considerably as well. Although the might of the dermic art was terrifying, its toll on the essence spirit was way too shocking. His cultivation realm was not sufficient to handle it. The situation would improve significantly if he could cultivate to the Yang spirit realm. The old ape heaved a sigh of relief with the removal of the sinister gray-colored ripples. He leaped into the air and extended his palm towards Protector 1 in midair. Protector 1 came to his senses and fled as well. Roar! The old ape opened his mouth and let out a roar. His glabella shone and released a burst of golden light that shot the back of Protector 1's head. It was an essence spirit secret skill. Protector 1 was impressive as well as he focused his essence spirit right away and released a sharp spirit consciousness shockwave with his glabella, forming a single green feather in midair. Shoo! The green feather tore through the air. In a flash, the golden light and green feather collided. It was completely silent. After a momentary pause, the green feather evaporated and the golden light spilled through the voids, scattering as golden spots. Among them, dozens of golden spots shot into the back of Protector 1's head and charged into the latter's spirit consciousness, creating waves. Ah! Protector 1 howled in pain from the impact to his essence spirit and shuddered, nearly falling from the air. The aura of death composed him as he endured the immense pain and continued fleeing forward. However, that single moment of delay was enough. The old ape had caught up to him. Boom! A gigantic palm crushed down with a terrifying might like a meteor and explosions could be heard through the air. Protector 1 slapped his storage bag and withdrew a dermic weapon once again. Rise! He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of essence blood on the dermic weapon. The dermic weapon expanded swiftly and looked like the bone fragment of a demon beast. It was incomparably tough as he held it above his head as a shield. Bang! The palm descended and smashed against the bone fragment violently. Snap! The bone fragment exploded. Protector 1 spat out a huge mouthful of blood as though he was struck by thunder. The old ape advanced swiftly and extended his heavenly encompassing palm once again. He grabbed Protector 1's head and squeezed forcefully. Protector 1's head exploded like a watermelon and blood filled the skies. His essence spirit was destroyed. A high-level fiend demon had fallen. The old ape turned around and chased the remaining 3 men. It was too fast. Although they were both high-level fiend demons, Protector 1 was almost helpless against the old ape who seemed like he was in his twilight years. Within a few blows, his head was ruptured. At Protector 1's point of death, one of the remaining protectors was severely injured and had just risen while another was held back by the pale-faced burly man. The last one did not manage to escape far before the old ape caught up to him. When Suzimo saw that, he knew that the battle was already over. The demons present realized it as well. Some of them stopped, some of them fled while some of them began to help Suzimo's side. The tides had turned completely. Suzimo had already stopped. He no longer had anything to do with everything here and he stood on the spot as he tried to recall the sensation of Barren once again. He comprehended and practiced it continuously. A long time later, the chaotic sounds of the massacre gradually quietened. Territorial Lord of Howling Moon Mountain, what's your name? A voice sounded in Suzimo's ears but he did not seem to realize it. He only snapped to his senses when Solitary Cloud nudged him gently and turned around to look. The battle was already over. The ground around him was strewn with corpses and fresh blood was everywhere. It was a tragic sight. Many fiend demons were cleaning up the battlefield. The old ape stood not far away with a few corpses beneath his feet. By the look of it, those were the fallen protectors. The one who asked the question was the pale-faced burly man beside the old ape. I'm Mo. Suzimo replied. What's your true form? Why can't I see through you? The pale-faced burly man sized up Suzimo brazenly and asked another question. Suzimo remained silent. This was a question that he could not reply. Upon Suzimo's silence, the pale-faced burly man frowned. He was about to fly into a rage when the old ape beside him coughed gently. Linger, there's no need to ask. The old ape waved it off and looked at Suzimo deeply. I believe that your true form is definitely an extraordinary creature since you're able to have a WRM submit to you wholeheartedly. Suzimo smiled and did not reply. The spirit tiger at the side looked at the pale-faced burly man and rolled his eyes as he sent a voice transmission mentally. He looks like a brute but his name is Linger, how disgusting. You guys come. The old ape beckoned. Suzimo's group headed over. The old ape swept his gaze across Suzimo's group before fixing it on Monkey's shoulders eventually. The rod on your shoulders, can I have a look at it? The spirit tiger and the others became nervous instantly. Could that old fogey have taken a liking to Brother Monkey's imminent? Monkey handed it over without a second thought. Although he was prideful and untamed, he had principles. If others showed him respect, he would extend the same and even more in return. Despite his status as an overlord, the old ape made a request to Monkey instead of demanding it directly. That fact alone gave Monkey good vibes. The old ape received the rod and sized it up for a long time. In between, he glanced at Monkey from time to time and nodded as he murmured, very nice, very nice. Everyone was confused. They did not know if the old ape was referring to Imminent or Monkey. For some unknown reason, Monkey felt goosebumps from the old ape's gaze. Others might not have been able to sense it, but Monkey had a feeling that the way the old ape looked at him implied something. This rod is not bad at all. The old ape returned Imminent to Monkey and smiled with a benevolent expression. Since you are of the same race, feel free to look for Linger in the future if you've got any questions regarding your cultivation in the future. The two of you can build a closer relationship. Instantly, the expressions of Suzimo's group turned odd when they heard that. Chapter 843 Stars in Daylight. Chapter 843, Stars in Daylight. Monkey's expression froze. Closer relationship. He did not know if he was hearing things or if the old ape had said it by mistake. What relationship was there to build between him and the pale-faced burly man? Monkey thought about it more carefully and chills ran down his spine. Immediately after, a startling scene unfolded. A rare blush appeared on the pale-faced burly man's face and he stomped his feet gently, pulling the old ape's arm and wheedling, "Grandpa, what are you talking about? I don't want to." The expressions of Su Zimo's group changed and their stomachs churned as though they were about to regurgitate something out. Pooey. The spirit tiger could stand it and turned to puke with a pale expression. The spirit tiger looked at the furious pale-faced burly man and waved it off hurriedly. Sorry? It was too much, I couldn't keep it in? If you can't keep it in, swallow it again. The pale-faced burly man ground his teeth and said angrily. Pooey. The spirit tiger cursed internally when he heard that. That sounds even more disgusting. He turned and vomited again. The pale-faced burly man raised his brows and was about to get furious again. Immediately, the spirit tiger's expression changed as he begged, "Brother, please don't do this. I truly can't take it anymore." The pale-faced burly man was enraged and charged forward, wanting to teach the spirit tiger a lesson. The spirit tiger realized that he was in a bad situation and hid behind Monkey in a flash. "Brother, you should spend your time building a closer relationship with Brother Monkey instead since you guys are of the same race." Monkey shuddered in shock as well. He was fearless in his day-to-day actions, but now he was scared out of his wits by a random statement from the old ape. The old ape coughed gently and chuckled before saying indifferently, "There must be some misunderstanding here." "It's a grave misunderstanding," the spirit tiger mumbled. Monkey nodded hurriedly. For the first time he agreed with the spirit tiger and felt that the latter was extremely cute. In fact, he was even pondering if he should treat the spirit tiger better in the future. The old ape pulled the pale-faced burly man to his side and explained, "Let me reintroduce you guys. This is Yuan Linger, my granddaughter. She's more tomboyish but she's a woman." Everyone's mouth fell agape and they were petrified. "You're a female?" The spirit tiger's jaws nearly dropped to the ground as he blurted. Yuan Linger was so furious that she charged forward and pulled the spirit tiger out by his legs, smashing the latter onto the ground violently. Su Zimo was about to step in. However, something stirred in his heart. He sensed that although Yuan Linger was furious, she knew her limits and was not actually hurting the spirit tiger for real. "Vomit more. Vomit more." Yuan Linger was furious and chanted repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, a huge crater appeared on the ground. The spirit tiger laid limply within with his legs facing the skies. His face was bruised as he sobbed innocently. "What has this got to do with me? Why are you whacking me?" Ching Ching and Little Fox were laughing so badly that they rolled over. Yuan Linger was still furious and returned to the old ape's side saying in a huff, "Grandpa, I get your intention. However, I want to make my own decision for something like this." She glanced askance at Monkey who was hiding at the side and pouted her lips in disdain. "A low-level fiend demon is not worthy of me. I'm a high-level fiend demon. Even if you take the initiative to come over to me, I won't even take a second look at you." Initially, Monkey wanted nothing more than to hide. However, when he heard that, he was displeased. "So what if you're a high-level fiend demon?" Monkey sneered, "I've merely cultivated for slightly more than 100 years. If I'm at your age, I would have long been a grand demon that reigns everywhere." "Anybody can brag." Yuan Linger sneered as well, "Even when you get to my age, I can pummel your head until it turns into a pig's head." The expressions of Su Zimo and the others turned odd when they looked at the two of them argue. The old ape stood at the side beaming brightly in satisfaction without saying anything. Yuan Linger pointed at Monkey and said word by word, "Also, you better not provoke me. If you provoke me, I can pummel you right now." Monkey was prideful and hated to be threatened. He raised his arm and shouted, "How cocky! Come on then. Let's spar right now." "What are you being cocky about, young lady?" "You're asking for it." Yuan Linger gave a stifled laugh. "Come with me, I'll take you somewhere else to spare you the embarrassment." With that said, Yuan Linger led the way. Monkey was hot-blooded and wanted to follow her right away. The spirit tiger crawled out of the pit hurriedly and pulled Monkey by the arm, reminding the latter, "Brother Monkey, don't be reckless. She's a high-leveled. Don't worry, I'll help you get even with her." Monkey waved it off suavely and followed behind Yuan Linger. The two of them entered a pitch-black cave and disappeared before long. When he saw that, Suzimo broke out into laughter. Although he was praised by the old ape from time to time, he noticed a long time ago that the old ape truly had his eyes set on Monkey. Suzimo did not know the exact reason. However, it was definitely not merely because they were from the same race. Suzimo guessed that there was a high chance it had something to do with Monkey's bloodline. Monkey's bloodline was extremely strong. Among the 7 sworn siblings, Monkey was the strongest apart from Suzimo and Night Spirit. Furthermore, there was something strange about the fact that Dai Yu imparted the Tendon's transformation section of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to Monkey. Bang, bang, bang. In the cave not far away, the sound of fierce collisions echoed. It sounded extremely intense. However, everything subsided before long. Immediately after, Yuan Linger came out in a carefree manner. Her expression was normal and her breathing was steady. She tidied her attire, puffed her chest and walked to the old ape's side without looking at everyone else present. "Grandpa, let's go." The old ape smiled and said to Suzimo, "You guys can stay in Ape Chatter Ridge for a period of time, there's no need to rush. 7 days later, I'll take you guys along to the 1,000-year Blood Sea to take part in the 1,000 demon meet." "Thank you, Overlord." Suzimo's group expressed their gratitude with cupped fists. Right then a figure exited the cave. Monkey swayed and stumbled from side to side with a bruised face that resembled a pig's head. He looked extremely wretched. Everything had its counter. It was a rare sight to see Monkey at a loss, and the spirit tiger and the others were amused when they saw the injuries on Monkey's face. Monkey sensed everyone's gazes and gave a gentle cough. "As you guys expected, I had a massive fight with that young lass and things ended in a tie." Ching Ching and Little Fox were dumbfounded. The spirit tiger rolled his eyes and nearly spat out blood. "How is this a tie?" The spirit tiger laughed gloatingly. "Brother Monkey, stop acting. What do you mean get even for me? You were walloped by her, weren't you, ha?" Monkey's expression darkened. The spirit tiger did not notice the killing intent and lamented to himself, "Actually, the two of us suffer from the same fate. Although I was pummeled badly, thankfully you're here to accompany me as well. Hey, why are you hitting me?" Before the spirit tiger could finish, Monkey whisked the former and smashed him onto the ground again. Bang, bang, bang. Another huge pit appeared on the ground. The spirit tiger laid limply within with tears streaming down his face and no attachments to life left. Everyone burst into laughter. Right then, stars appeared one after another in the distant horizons. They shifted continuously with a chaotic trajectory. It was as though an invisible pair of hands were rearranging the stars in the skies. Suzimo stopped laughing and frowned, murmuring to himself, "Stars in daylight." Chapter 844 Blood-Colored Human Face. Chapter 844 Blood-Colored Human Face. The old ape had not gone far and noticed this as well. He paused in his tracks and gazed at it with a grim expression. By now, night was gone and the skies were clear and bright. However, ancient stars appeared one after another in the distant horizons, flashing in a chaotic, imperceivable manner. "Grandpa, what's happening?" Yuan Linger had only cultivated for a short period of time and could not help but ask, as she had never witnessed a scene as bewildering as such. "I've never encountered a universal phenomenon as such either." The old ape shook his head and said slowly, "I gather that something big must have happened in this world. This matter must be so great that stars are appearing in daytime and the constellations have gone into chaos." "What could it be?" Yuan Linger pressed. "It's hard to tell." The old ape replied, "It might be the birth of a treasure, a secret skill, or the attainment of the Tao by a grand demon. In fact, universal phenomenons can even happen if peerless experts are born or have fallen. I heard that when the emperor of Fahua Monastery died in the catastrophe of the North region 10,000 years ago, a universal phenomenon occurred. Even the universe wept over the death of an emperor." The old ape said sadly, "It was said that multiple Buddhas appeared in the skies that day and heavenly flowers fell. The ground was laid with golden lotuses and Sanskrit echoed through the world for an extremely long time." Yuan Linger had a shocked expression. The old ape lamented, "When you cultivate to the level where you are respected by all, there is nothing to regret in life any longer." A moment later, the old ape continued to stare at the stars in the skies and frowned. Judging from the location, the stars seemed to be extremely close to the 1,000-year Blood Sea. Could the two be connected? 7 days later. Many demons gathered at Ape Chatter Ridge. There were close to 1,000 and all of them were mid-level fiend demons. Su Zimo's group was among them as well. Although they were mostly low-level fiend demons and stood out from the crowd, there was no look of contempt in the eyes of the demons present. The memories of the battle 7 days ago were still fresh in their minds. There was a hint of cautiousness in the eyes of the demons present when they looked at the scarlet-haired man at the front. Not long after, the old ape appeared with Yuan Linger. Prepare to move. The old ape did not waste time on speaking and his glabella shone to release a massive spirit consciousness. He waved his robes and a huge, dark cloud gathered in front of him. The dark cloud extended. In the blink of an eye, the dark cloud enveloped all the demons present. All of you relax your minds. Don't resist it. The old ape's voice sounded. Immediately after, the demons felt zero gravity and floated into the air. In the blink of an eye, they departed Ape Chatter Ridge and sped into the distant horizons. The sound of the wind howled by their ears. Judging from their speed, the demons could arrive at their destination in less than 3 days. Su Zimo nodded to himself. An overlord was capable indeed. He definitely required boundless dermic powers to support the dark cloud that could carry more than 1,000 fiend demons and yet maintain that frightening speed. As Su Zimo pondered, the voice of the old ape echoed in his mind. It was a direct voice transmission to him from the latter. "Mo, I'm sure the reason why you wish to take part in the 1,000 demon meet is because you want to fight for a spot to enter the 1,000-year blood sea to cultivate, right?" Su Zimo replied with a voice transmission, "Of course." With 7 overlords gathered at the 1,000 demon meet, it was unsuitable for him to release many methods of human cultivators. However, he believed that with his current strength, he could fight against most mid-level fiend demons even without using his black-haired essence spirit. At the very least, Su Zimo was convinced that he could suppress everyone in melee combat using the power of his physique. That's probably going to be difficult. The old ape said, "I've witnessed your capabilities before. Indeed, your body is strong and you are even more fearsome in melee combat." With a few words, the old ape recognized Su Zimo's specialties. Immediately after, he changed the topic. However, there are only 10 spots available to enter the 1,000-year blood sea. If you wish to obtain one of them, you have to go through 2 trials and you're unable to pass the first. "Huh?" Su Zimo asked, "What's the first trial about?" Simply put, the first trial is a test of an essence spirit strength. The old ape explained, the chance to cultivate in the 1,000-year blood sea is rare and only comes once every 1,000 years. Furthermore, there are only 10 spots available each time. That is why we will select the strongest mid-level fiend demons to enter and cultivate within. With that, we have the possibility of grooming high-level fiend demons. At that point, Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, "How do we determine the strength of one's essence spirit? A fight between the essence spirits?" Fights between essence spirits were the most dangerous. Any single mistake could lead to one's death. No fiend demon would dare to attempt it casually. After all, if they damaged their essence spirits just to fight for a spot to cultivate, the cons would outweigh the pros. There's no need for that. The old ape shook his head. The trial of an essence spirit strength is simple, we'll just compare the radius one's spirit consciousness can cover. Su Zimo froze momentarily when he heard that. 4 low-level fiend demons, the range of their spirit consciousnesses starts from 5 kilometers and their limit is 50 kilometers. However, the range of the spirit consciousness of mid-level fiend demons starts from 50 kilometers and can extend to 500 kilometers. The old ape said, "You're a low-level fiend demon that hasn't cultivated to the peak. Even if you're a low-level fiend demon at the peak, your spirit consciousness won't be able to extend further than 50 kilometers. Moreover, you have to understand that the ones fighting for the spots to cultivate in the Blood Sea are all Territorial lords who are mid-level fiend demons. There's no way you can compete against them for this trial." Su Zimo smiled and replied nonchalantly, "Not necessarily." The old ape exclaimed softly. He could tell that Su Zimo was implying something. He went silent for a moment and did not press further, merely lamenting instead, "It's truly rare for a low-level fiend demon to be able to secure the seat of a Territorial lord firmly." 3 days later. Even through the thick dark cloud, Su Zimo could still sense a faint hint of blood stench. Furthermore, the speed of the dark cloud was gradually decreasing. He realized that they were approaching the 1,000-year blood sea. Not long after, the demons felt the dark cloud turn thinner as their bodies descended. They regained vision once more and gazed downwards. Beneath them was a vast plain that was boundless. On the vast plains, many fiend demons were gathered. Although most of them were in human forms, their demonic chi was torrential and rumbled furiously. Voices roared beneath and it was bustling. The most striking thing was a region in the center of the vast plains that was incomparably grisly red. The 1,000-year Blood Sea. The Blood Sea was not a sea but a lake. However, the surface area of the lake was too huge and on the ground, one could not see the ends of it. The demons could only see the Blood Sea in its entirety if they were looking down from midair. Su Zimo took a single glance at the Blood Sea and his expression changed. That instant, ripples surfaced on the Blood Sea and seemed as though they converged to form a human's face within it. It was a blood-colored human face. Furthermore, the face seemed like it was laughing. It was extremely sinister and eerie. Pust! Su Zimo gasped and shuddered. When he looked at it again, the ripples in the Blood Sea were gone and its surface was calm. The blood-colored human face disappeared as well. With a slightly pale expression, Su Zimo glared at the Blood Sea for a long time. The blood-colored human face did not appear again. It was as though he was merely imagining things earlier. Su Zimo shrugged his head and let out a deep breath before descending with the rest of the demons. Chapter 845 Overlords Gathered. Chapter 845 Overlords Gathered. There were only slightly more than 1,000 fiend demons from Ape Chatter Ridge that came. However, there were several dozen thousands of fiend demons gathered on the vast plains. Furthermore, that number was still increasing. Many demons were gathered for the 1,000-demon meet. It was not only fiend demons from territories, even fiend demons without any factions were here to join the crowd. On the vast plains beneath, there were 7 distinct divides in the area around the 1,000-year Blood Sea. The old ape led the group of demons and descended upon one of the divides. He. The moment the demons landed, an odd laughter sounded. Not far away, a scrawny old man with a yellowish face and a goatee said in a strange tone with crossed arms, "Old Yuan, you're still alive." The goatee old man was surrounded by man-demons like he was the center of attraction. Moreover, although he seemed scrawny, the aura he emanated was extremely sharp and domineering. Humph! The old ape swept his gaze across and sneered, "How can I make a move first before you're dead, old goat?" "That's the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak." Within the crowd, Yuan Linger whispered to Monkey, "This old goat has been at odds with Grandpa for a long time. The two of them fought twice in the past but the old goat ended in defeat both times." During their stay in Ape Chatter Ridge, Monkey and Yuan Linger fought daily. However, the two of them seemed to have gotten much closer. For things like these, Yuan Linger would take the initiative to inform Monkey about what was going on, but she would not say it to Su Zimo and the others. "This old ape sure is energetic." A voice sounded on the other end not far away. "I heard that an internal strife broke out in Ape Chatter Ridge not too long ago, but this old ape suppressed everything within a few strikes." The person that spoke wore black robes and had a well-shaped body. He sat high and above, glaring coldly below with his lips pursed tightly. The aura he exuded was incomparably fierce. "That's the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley." Yuan Linger whispered, "He is an ancient remnant beast, the Silvermoon Wolf." From what the two of you had just said, Brother Yuan sure is healthy and honed as ever. A beautiful woman wearing a colorful shawl appeared in the area beside Silvermoon Valley. She was flirtatious and said sweetly, "My heart is tingling from the thought of it." Needless to think, only an Overlord would be qualified to speak at such a moment. "Don't look at her." Yuan Linger glared at Monkey sternly and said, "That woman is the Overlord of Thousand Snake Island and she's extremely cruel. She might gouge your eyes out if you look at her." Tisk. Monkey pouted its lips in disdain. The old ape merely smiled indifferently upon hearing the Overlord of Thousand Snake Island's words. "Don't refer to me as your brother. At my age, I can even be your grandfather." "Brother Yuan, you sure are naughty taking advantage of me like this." The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island wheedled but her eyes shone with a cold glint. Although this woman looked weak and feeble, nobody dared to underestimate her. To become an Overlord, one's hands had to be tainted by countless fresh blood and they had to trample on countless corpses on the way up. Right now, 4 of the 7 Overlords had arrived. Su Zimo's group looked ordinary within the demons present and they did not attract much attention. Right then, a golden cloud floated over from the distant skies. Upon closer inspection, thin flames can even be seen burning on the golden clouds. In the blink of an eye, the golden clouds dispersed. Thousands of fiend demons descended. Their leader was a man in golden battle armor with a tall, mighty and muscular figure. His head was raised and he had a pair of bull horns as he strode over in a grand manner. Ha 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 ha. The newcomer laughed. Old ape, you're early this time round. If you're free, let's go for a spar. The spirit tiger said in a low voice, another opponent? Our overlord sure has many enemies. Hell, don't make wild guesses. Yuan Linger remarked, this is the overlord of Golden Flames Mountain and he's the closest to Grandpa. The old ape chuckled bitterly. Forget it, I'm not going to spar you at my age. Croak, croak. A strange sound echoed from the distant skies. Immediately after, resplendent lights filled the heavens. Countless flower petals scattered with a sweet fragrance. A large group of fiend demons flew through the air, standing on auspicious clouds. In the middle was a majestic carriage that was exquisite and grand. Within, a fatty with a huge tummy laid down. There were dozens of young girls holding flower baskets accompanying the carriage, scattering petals from time to time. Within the carriage, there were even women massaging the fatty's legs and arms while feeding him wine and spirit fruits. It was an enjoyable life. This fatty sure knows how to enjoy himself. The overlord of Golden Flames Mountain scoffed coldly. However, no matter how he hides it, he can't conceal the stench of his body. That's the overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley and his true form is an azure-eye toad. The azure-eye toad, a pure-blooded ferocious beast. It had a pair of azure eyes and its body was filled with toxic poison, killing anyone that made contact with it. It could devour anything in the world, even the carcass of a fallen dragon. 6 of the 7 overlords have now arrived. The demons did not have to wait for long when a misty cloud appeared in the distant skies in a hazy manner. The mist was extremely powerful and the demons could not scan it with their spirit consciousnesses. By the time the mist closed in, fiend demons appeared from it one after another. The leader was a man in pitch-black armor that covered even his face and revealed nothing but a pair of eyes that were cold. His eyes were frosty and cruel, sending shivers down the spine of anyone he gazed upon. The overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp had arrived. The true form of Confusion Mist Swamp's overlord was an ancient gigantic crocodile. The 7 overlords from Ape Chatter Ridge, Levitating Goat Peak, Golden Flames Mountain, Vermilion Cloud Valley, Silver Moon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp were all gathered and they had many high-level fiend demons under their lead as well. It was a grand formation. Massive spirit consciousness fluctuations reverberated through the air but no sound could be heard. Before long, the 7 overlords left their original positions and convened to discuss something. Su Zimo guessed that there was a high chance it had something to do with the stars that were seen in broad daylight previously. Long time no see, everyone from Ape Chatter Ridge. Right then, a few fiend demons from Levitating Goat Peak, Silver Moon Valley and Thousand Snake Island came over. Their expressions were hostile and there was a hint of provocation in their eyes. After not seeing you guys for 1,000 years, more than half of your 10 great territorial lords have changed? A skinny man from Levitating Goat Peak surveyed the surroundings and asked with raised brows, has Ing Li and the others already advanced to become high-level fiend demons? It's possible that they might have cultivated to become grand demons by now. Ha ha ha. The fiend demons of Silver Moon Valley and Thousand Snake Island roared in laughter. They had long heard about the internal strife in Ape Chatter Ridge that resulted in immense losses with 4 out of 5 protectors dead and many fiend demons injured or slain. Their purpose here was to mock at Ape Chatter Ridge. Nopes. A fiend demon of Ape Chatter Ridge replied sincerely, Ing Li and the others tried to revolt and were killed. Although a few of the 10 great territorial lords were killed, they will naturally be replaced. Replaced. The skinny man from Levitating Goat Peak swept his gaze across the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge. He could not help but laugh as he pointed to Su Zimo's group. Don't tell me that you're intending to replace the 10 great territorial lords of Ape Chatter Ridge with these few low-level fiend demons here. Ha ha ha. The demons of Silver Moon Valley and Levitating Goat Peak roared in laughter. For the 1,000 demon meet, the weakest demons that could enter were low-level fiend demons. However, low-level fiend demons were mostly used as slaves to pour and serve tea. The dozen young women around the overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley were all low-level fiend demons. Suddenly, the expressions of Ape Chatter Ridge's fiend demons turned odd when they looked at the demons of Levitating Goat Peak pointing at Suzimo. Chapter 846, Provocation. Chapter 846, Provocation. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley said slowly, "Everyone, what are your thoughts on the appearance of a universal phenomenon in Thousand Demon Valley?" The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley gave a stifled laugh. The other Overlords exchanged glances with calm expressions, but none of them said anything. The 7 Overlords were all several thousand years old. Even if they had their own thoughts about it, they would not let others read them. "Silvermoon, what do you mean by that?" The Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp asked with an indifferent expression and a robust voice. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley smiled gently. The appearance of stars in daylight might be due to the appearance of an ancient ruin or the opening of some secret ground. In any case, it's definitely something major for Thousand Demon Valley. Although there were conflicts between us usually, if an ancient ruin or secret ground has truly opened up, why don't we let go of our past grievances and explore it together? Of course. The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island smiled coyly. I agree with that. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain sneered internally at their hypocrisy and asked loudly, "If there is only one utmost treasure, who shall it belong to?" A cold glint flashed through the eyes of all 7 Overlords. At that time it'll depend on who is stronger. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak said coldly. In truth, at the end of the day, even if they worked together, all of them would be guarded against one another and harbor motives of their own. There would definitely be a bloodshed if they caught sight of any utmost treasure. Right then, the old ape sensed something and turned to gaze into the distance. The demons of Ape Chatter Ridge seemed to be encountering some problems. The fiend demons of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley and Thousand Snake Island were talking to the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge with mocking expressions. "Old Man Yuan, let's not interfere in the affairs of the younger generation. Let them continue with their squabbles." The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak curled his lips with a fake smile. "That's right." The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island added sweetly. "This is the Thousand Demon Meet and it's only normal if there's any conflicts between our underlings. As Overlords, there's no need for us to interfere." The old ape had an odd expression as he asked, "Are you sure we don't need to stop them? Brother Yuan, let's continue chatting. Why should we bother about a conflict between the younger generation?" The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley chuckled. "Oh." The old ape nodded expressionlessly. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain was the closest to the old ape and knew that Ape Chatter Ridge suffered an immense loss from the internal strife with more than half of the 10 great territorial lords dead. "Are you sure it's fine?" The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain sent a voice transmission. "Should I send some of my territorial lords to render some assistance for your guys?" "There's no need." The old ape smiled. "We don't know who are going to be the ones getting anxious later on." "Hey." The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak pointed at Suzimo's nose arrogantly and berated in a loud voice, "Don't annoy me by standing here, low-level fiend demons." "Scram?" Suzimo was expressionless. There was no need for him to make a move for something as such. The 3 fiend demons before him were not worthy of him making a move. "You had better scram." Solitary Cloud stood at the side and said coldly. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak narrowed his gaze and scanned Solitary Cloud with his spirit consciousness before saying in a strange manner, "A WRM. You want to play hero? How dare a mere goat demon dare to be so cocky?" Scram. Solitary Cloud had a cold gaze and he released a chilling killing intent to match. A WRM that has cultivated for less than 1,000 years is no different from a snake. You must have a death wish. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak had a bright gaze and struck without warning. He was naturally capable since he dared to come and taunt others. He was one of the 10 great territorial lords of Levitating Goat Peak and was not a nobody. Although he was ranked last, he was not somebody that ordinary fiend demons could compare against. He could tell that Solitary Cloud had cultivated for less than 1,000 years. That was the reason why he dared to attack right away. Solitary Cloud harumphed coldly when the fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak threw a punch. He took a step forward and blood chi rumbled as he sent a punch in return as well. Bang. The body of the fiend demon from Levitating Goat Peak shuddered and he staggered 3 steps back with a startled expression. If this was Solitary Cloud 100 years ago, He would not have been a match for the 10 great territorial lords although he was strong. However, cultivating by Su Zimo's side for 100 years had been a great boon to him. Kill? The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak advanced once again and his pitch-black robes fluttered. 2 cold spots of light flashed from within and pierced towards Solitary Cloud's face. Those were 2 spears that moved at an extremely fast speed. Solitary Cloud opened his mouth wide and spat out his WRM bone scissors. With his spirit consciousness, dermic power surged and the WRM bone scissors expanded rapidly, cutting towards the 2 incoming spears. 2 WRMs soared into the air. Snap. The WRM bone scissors sliced down and cut the 2 spears into 4 parts. The 4 parts fell to the ground and the body of the spear was dim without light. It was completely destroyed by the WRM bone scissors. How dare you destroy my dermic weapon? The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak was enraged and his glabella shone. Instantly, 2 light spots floated out and expanded swiftly in midair. The 2 spears earlier on were his ordinary dermic weapons. But now, the fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak had brought out his life force dermic weapon. It was a pair of shimmering silver sickles with blades that were lined with reverse spikes. It was extremely intimidating. Umph. Solitary Cloud sneered. How dare you embarrass yourself with that useless destiny dermic weapon? Cut it up. He controlled his WRM bone scissors and 2 WRMs soared and roared into the air, creating a bright white light. Like 2 searing chains they coiled around the pair of sickles. Snap. Snap. The WRM bone scissors cut 3 times in succession. Accompanied with the sound, the pair of sickles snapped instantly. The expression of the fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak changed starkly and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he glared at Solitary Cloud with a hateful expression. Because his mind was connected to the destiny dermic weapon, its destruction resulted in a severe injury for him. He had refined that dermic weapon for more than 2,000 years. Its instant destruction right now was equivalent to 2,000 years' worth of effort wasted. This was a huge blow. Previously, the WRM bone scissors were destroyed by the bronze square tripod during the battle at Howling Moon Mountain. Later on, Su Zimo refined it using the secret skill of the Yin Spirit section and it was restored a long time ago and was even stronger than before. How savage. The fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley had a grim expression and said darkly, I'll take you on. Solitary Cloud shifted his gaze onto a fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island nearby and sneered, The 2 of you can come together. I'll save you the trouble of thinking about how to ambush me sneakily, woman. The fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island was not furious when she was exposed and smiled wryly instead. I'll graciously accept your demand then. Brazen. The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak barked hatefully. Solitary Cloud was brazen to begin with and had always been cocky. However, he reined his character after he was subdued by Su Zimo 100 years ago and followed the latter from day to day. If he was up against others, his true nature would be exposed. As a WRM, he naturally had the right to be cocky. Ha ha ha. Solitary Cloud burst into laughter. You don't seem like you're happy too. I'll count you in, come on. I'll take all of you on. Alright, don't regret this. The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak growled and demonic chi rumbled as cracks echoed from within his body. In the blink of an eye, he reverted to his true form. Roar. On the other side, the fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley roared and reverted to his true form as well. The fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island stuck out her tongue that transformed into a snake's forked tongue instantly as she hissed. The 3 fiend demons did not dare to be reckless and were prepared to fight with all their might as they reverted to their true forms. Chapter 847, Someone's Mount. Chapter 847, Someone's Mount. Hurry, look. There's a fight there. They're reverting to their true form? What a commotion. What's happening over there? The territorial lords of Silvermoon Valley, levitating Goat Peak and Thousand Snake Island started the provocation and a WRM of Ape Chatter Ridge took them on. Both sides are now fighting. The demons on the vast plains were attracted to the commotion at the side of Ape Chatter Ridge. What's the background of that WRM? How can it fight against 3 people single-handedly? I don't know. I haven't seen him before, so I guess he should be one of the new territorial lords of Ape Chatter Ridge? The demons discussed. On the side of levitating Goat Peak, a gray-haired man assumed a lotus position at the front of the mid-level fiend demons. He had a scrawny appearance and glared coldly at the battlefield not far away. "Young master, this WRM from Ape Chatter Ridge might be a match for you." The gray-haired man pouted his lips gently in disdain. "This WRM's Tao is shallow and he is of no threat to me. He might be qualified to fight against me if he cultivates for another 100 years or so." At the side of Silvermoon Valley. "Sir, that WRM seems troublesome to deal with." A silver-robed man stood at the front of the Territorial Lords with a cold expression as a fiend demon beside him spoke. "No worries." The silver-robed man waved it off. "If they're unable to win, I'll step in personally to subdue that WRM. If he refuses to submit to me, he can't blame me for crippling him." At the front of Thousand Snake Island. A woman in thick makeup smacked her lips and looked at the WRM soaring in midair with a cold glint in her eyes. "I wonder what the flesh of a WRM tastes like." The woman in makeup murmured. A storm brewed on the battlefield. Solitary Cloud did not dare to be overconfident against 3 Territorial Lords either. He reverted to his true form and his long muscular figure circled through the voids. Scales lined his body densely. They had become whitish from their initial gray color and emanated a glow. He had a pair of claws beneath his abdomen that were sharp. The most striking thing was a small bump between Solitary Cloud's glabella. 100 years ago the bump was not very obvious. But now the bump was easily recognizable. By the time that bump grew and tore from his skin to become a true horn, it would mean that he was about to undergo a complete transformation into a dragon. Roar! Solitary Cloud roared and his blood chi rumbled with a cold might. The bloodline unique to pure-blooded ferocious beasts created an obvious suppression towards the fiend demons of Levitating Goat Peak, Thousand Snake Island and Silvermoon Valley. "Kill?" The 3 fiend demons roared. The fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley brought out a streak of silver light that flashed in midair before disappearing instantly. It flew towards Solitary Cloud's neck at lightning speed. That dermic weapon was created from the scale of an ancient grand demon and was incomparably sharp. It was able to cut through weapons, shave metals and slice jade. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island opened her mouth and spat out a flurry of oily green poison needles that enveloped Solitary Cloud. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak took a deep breath. Although his Destiny dermic weapon was destroyed, he had other dermic weapons in his storage bag. Swash. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak brought out a saber that emanated a chilling aura. He tore through the air and sliced down in Solitary Cloud's direction. The 3 fiend demons had attacked at the same time. Cut it. Solitary Cloud was unfazed and controlled his WRM bone scissors to cut forward viciously. Snap. The saber of Levitating Goat Peak's fiend demon was snapped again. Bang. Boom. Boom. Solitary Cloud's glabella shone and he released a shocking dermic art, apocalyptic currents. One after another, raging tides appeared beneath him with a frightening aura and gushed forward. The 3 fiend demons were stricken. The currents truly possessed an apocalyptic might. Although the bunch of needles from Thousand Snake Island's fiend demon were lethal, they were weak and scattered immediately when they made contact with the currents. Only the disc from Silvermoon Valley's fiend demon managed to tear through the waves and cut Solitary Cloud's body. Although Solitary Cloud tried his best to dodge, he was a tad too slow. A bloodied wound appeared on his body. Thankfully, his body was strong, his blood chi was robust and the defensive capabilities of his scales were extremely terrifying. Otherwise, Solitary Cloud would have been cut into 2 by that attack. You have a death wish. Although Solitary Cloud was injured, the 3 fiend demons were still caught up in his currents. They were exhausted resisting the currents and could not break free right away. Solitary Cloud dove into the currents and vanished instantly. WRMS specialized in water manipulation and could travel through clouds and create rains. When he entered the currents, he moved even faster and in the blink of an eye, he had already swam to the fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley and swept his tail viciously. Piak. The fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley was sent flying and his chest caved in. His robes were ripped in a mess of flesh and blood, looking extremely wretched. There were some clear fluctuations within the currents. Solitary Cloud had sensed them long ago. Not far away, the massive body of the fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak swam in reverse against the currents as he thrust his sharp horns towards Solitary Cloud. Solitary Cloud soared into the air and extended the claws beneath his abdomen. They shone with a cold shimmering light as they gripped the spine of levitating Goat Peak's fiend demon. Blood gushed out rapidly. Solitary Cloud gripped the levitating Goat Peak's fiend demon's spine and dragged him out of the currents, tossing away his body in a casual manner onto the ground. He smashed onto the ground heavily, and his injuries were so bad that he would require at least dozens of years to recover from it. Solitary Cloud turned his head and avoided the fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island who was trying to bite him. He spun in reverse and chomped down on the waist of Thousand Snake Island's fiend demon. Poof! Solitary Cloud chewed the fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island's body apart right away. The fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island shrieked. Fresh blood gushed out with a foul stench. The fiend demon of Thousand Snake Island said hatefully, "The blood that flows within my body is poisonous. You won't be able to live long after injuring my body." Humph! Solitary Cloud's eyes flashed with mockery. "Your poison blood can't taint my bloodline. I'll be able to purge away the poison after cultivating for a few days." Although he was a WRM, there was a trace of the dragon race's bloodline within his body after all. That single trace of bloodline from the dragon race was enough to protect his life and provide him with the time to purge the poison from his body. For somebody like Su Zimo, poison blood of that level wouldn't even be able to hurt him at all. In the blink of an eye, the three fiend demons were all defeated and seriously injured. All the demons present were shocked. A gray-haired young man from levitating Goat Peak stood up with a grim expression and headed over. A silver-robed man from Silvermoon Valley moved as well with a cold expression. A woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island strode over. "Look, this has caught the attention of the young master of levitating Goat Peak. That is the #1 territorial lord of Silvermoon Valley. The peerless beauty of Thousand Snake Island has appeared as well." The demons were all excited as they discussed loudly. Beside the 1,000-year blood sea, the overlord of levitating Goat Peak had a terrible expression as he harumphed coldly. "Old monkey, to think that a WRM has appeared in Ape Chatter Ridge. Interesting. If I'm not wrong, that WRM should be one of the replacements for Ape Chatter Ridge's 10 great territorial lords, right? What rank is he?" The overlord of Silvermoon Valley was composed and asked with a smile. "He's not a territorial lord." The old ape had a strange look on his face as he shook his head. "Not a territorial lord?" The overlord of Thousand Snake Island chuckled. "Brother Yuan, you sure love to joke. If that WRM isn't a territorial lord, what is he?" "He is someone's mount." The old ape replied indifferently. "Hmm?" The expressions of the overlords present changed starkly. Chapter 848, A Single Slap. Chapter 848, A Single Slap. "Young master, I'm sorry. I was defeated." The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak struggled to stand up with a few bloodied holes on his spine that were still oozing with fresh blood as he said with a pale face. "Scram back. Stop embarrassing yourself here." The gray-haired man of levitating Goat Peak that walked over berated coldly without a single hint of sympathy in his eyes. "Yes." The fiend demon of levitating Goat Peak did not dare to complain. The gray-haired man was the young master of levitating Goat Peak and was a direct descendant of levitating Goat Peak's overlord. Among the younger generation he had the greatest potential and was the strongest in combat. It was said within levitating Goat Peak that this young master would definitely take over the position of the overlord in the future. Although the fiend demon was indignant internally, he did not dare to reveal any emotions and could only stumble back with his head slumped and a battered body. At the same time, the #1 territorial lord of Silvermoon Valley and a woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island had already arrived in front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction. Everyone could tell that the three of them were hostile. "Foo-foo, Ape Chatter Ridge is sure in for it now. That WRM has already been poisoned and is injured. There's no way he can defend against the three of them." The #1 territorial lord of Silvermoon Valley and that woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island had already been to the 1,000-year blood sea to cultivate 1,000 years ago. Think about it, how much stronger are they now that 1,000 years have passed? The young master of levitating Goat Peak isn't to be trifled with either. Some people gloated while others merely watched the show. This was a situation that demons loved to witness. Otherwise, there was nothing interesting about the 1,000 demon meat if they were merely eating and drinking. By the looks of it, The three of them are prepared to cripple all the territorial lords of Ape Chatter Ridge. It's extremely likely. I'm guessing that Ape Chatter Ridge isn't going to get a single spot for the Bloodsea cultivation this time round. At the front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak stopped in his tracks with a cold gaze. He scanned the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge with a haughty aura. The gazes of the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge flickered, and most of them did not dare to match his gaze. There were only a few people that were composed. Although Solitary Cloud's bloodline was poisoned and he was injured, he stood proudly and glared at the young master of Levitating Goat Peak coldly before taunting. "Why? You wish to get back at us? Even when you beat a dog, you have to know who his master is." The young master of Levitating Goat Peak said slowly without emotions, "You've got to pay the price for injuring my men. I can spare your life." Right then, the silver-robed man approached and said in a deep voice, "If you submit to me and become my mount, I can pretend that nothing happened today." Ha ha ha. Solitary Cloud burst into laughter and glanced askance at the silver-robed man. "You think you're worthy?" He was a WIRM that would become a dragon in the future. Apart from a true dragon, nobody else could make him submit with conviction. The expression of the silver-robed man darkened and killing intent flashed through his eyes as he snarled word by word. "There's a limit to my patience. You had better not try to provoke me. Why are you wasting your breath on him? Just kill him." The young master of Levitating Goat Peak's voice was cold. The woman with makeup from Thousand Snake Island chuckled as well and smacked her lips. "I agree. The two of you please prepare to strike. I just want a taste of the WRM's flesh, that'll do." Solitary Cloud's gaze was fierce. Although he was poisoned, he was not willing to express weakness. Right as he was about to strike, a pale palm appeared on his shoulder. The palm patted him gently on the shoulder. Instantly, Solitary Cloud composed himself and took a half-step back. He looked at the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other two with a semblance of pity in his eyes. Immediately after, someone walked out from behind him. Scarlet hair, green robes and refined features. It was Su Zimo. Su Zimo said indifferently, "Everyone, he can't submit to you guys because he is already someone else's mount and has a master." The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was facing off against Solitary Cloud when a low-level fiend demon popped out of nowhere. Instantly, the three of them frowned. In their eyes, low-level fiend demons were ants. In fact, prior to this, none of them had even noticed Su Zimo's existence. "Ha!" The young master of Levitating Goat Peak gave a stifled laugh and said in a casual, sarcastic tone, "He has a master? Could you possibly be his master?" Immediately after, he retracted his smile and barked coldly, "There's no room for a low-level fiend demon to butt in when I was talking to him." Scram. How unfortunate. Su Zimo was untroubled and merely smiled gently. "I'm his master." Ha ha ha. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other two exchanged glances and a brief pause ensued. Immediately after, they clutched their bellies in laughter as though they had heard the greatest joke in the world. A WRM, a pure-blooded ferocious beast, a mid-level fiend demon, a mount for a low-level fiend demon. The three of them laughed without restraints. However, after a while, the three of them noticed something odd in the air. Although they were laughing, none of the fiend demons of Ape Chatter Ridge were laughing. Furthermore, the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge were glaring at them as though they were idiots. The silver-robed man was the first to react and frowned. The woman with makeup narrowed her eyes and pondered. The two of them had cultivated for several thousand years and would naturally not commit the mistake of underestimating an opponent. However, on second thought, the person before them looked ordinary and was only a low-level fiend demon. Even if he was capable, he was definitely not worthy of their attention. There were too many ways a mid-level fiend demon could kill a low-level fiend demon. Moreover, they were the top experts of the mid-level fiend demons. If they could not even handle a single low-level fiend demon, wouldn't they have wasted their effort cultivating thousands of years? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was still laughing as though he had not noticed anything amiss. All of a sudden, he stopped laughing. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak attacked all of a sudden. His attack was more like an ambush. It happened at lightning speed without any prior warning. The demons of Ape Chatter Ridge merely felt their visions blur, and the young master of Levitating Goat Peak had already vanished from sight. So fast. They were greatly alarmed. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak had a cold gaze and a menacing expression. He arrived before Su Zimo instantly without any hint of amusement on his face. Kill? He roared with rage. In his eyes, Su Zimo was nothing but a dead man right now. He was extremely swift and his attack was sudden. Even mid-level fiend demons might not be able to react to it, let alone low-level fiend demons. However, he froze momentarily when he met with Su Zimo's gaze. There was a hint of mockery in Su Zimo's eyes. Get lost. A roar echoed in his ears. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak seemed like he was struck by thunder and his eardrums almost ruptured. Immediately after, a palm landed on his cheeks violently and his face was almost torn apart by the tremendous strength. Piak. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was swift in his advance, but his retreat was even swifter. Right in front of everyone, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak had just charged forward when he was sent flying by a single palm strike and a furious roar from Su Zimo. The most bewildering thing was that Su Zimo had seemed to have realized it and struck preemptively. It was more like the young master of Levitating Goat Peak had thrown himself into the palm. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak thought that he could hide his thoughts from everyone. However, he did not know that Su Zimo possessed the unfathomable spirit perception. The moment his killing intent was triggered, Su Zimo was guarded. All the demons were in an uproar. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak could be considered as the strongest territorial lord of Levitating Goat Peak. However, he was sent flying with a slap on the face by a low-level fiend demon. None of them would have believed it if they had not witnessed it personally. Chapter 849, Domineering Suppression. Chapter 849, Domineering Suppression. Beside the Blood Sea. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak had a dark gaze and a grim look on his face. His cheeks were burning as though Su Zimo had slapped him on the face as well. The Overlords of Silvermoon Valley and Thousand Snake Island frowned. The three of them were not the only ones. A look of surprise flashed through the eyes of the other Overlords as well. Although they were conversing, everything that happened on the other side was naturally detected by them. Even the Overlords present were amused when the low-level fiend demon stood out and declared brazenly that the WRM was his mount. But now things did seem a little odd. Could that demon have cultivated some cultivation technique to conceal his cultivation realm? Almost at the same time, the spirit consciousnesses of 6 Overlords were fixed onto Su Zimo. Before long, all 6 of them figured out that Su Zimo was a low-level fiend demon. However, none of them could see his true form. The Overlords of Silvermoon Valley and Thousand Snake Island let out a deep breath and were temporarily relieved. If he was just a low-level fiend demon, he should pose no threat. The reason why the young master of Levitating Goat Peak was defeated so swiftly must be because he had underestimated his opponent. The old ape scoffed coldly internally, but he was expressionless on the surface. These fiend demons were stubbing their toes to try and bully Ape Chatter Ridge. At the front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction, the silver-robed man's heart skipped a beat as he nodded and began to take things seriously. Interesting, you are capable indeed. He could tell that apart from the young master of Levitating Goat Peak's underestimation of his opponent, another reason why the latter received such a swift defeat was because he was momentarily stunned by the roar of this low-level fiend demon. Sound secret skills? I know some as well. The silver-robed man strode forward and bellowed into the air. Howl? A wolf's howl echoed. The demons of Ape Chatter Ridge were stunned. Although the sound was not loud, it was extremely sinister and their blood rumbled in an uncomfortable manner. Some of the fiend demons could not withstand it and grunted dully. They arched their backs and struggled bitterly as they clutched their ears. It's no wonder why ghosts wail and wolves howl. That sure is uncomfortable to listen to. Su Zimo was expressionless and strode forward as well. He extended his hand and pushed down onto the silver-robed man's face as he yelled, "Shut up!" The group of demons at the back were further away and they could not withstand the sound. However, Su Zimo stood right at the front and was the closest to the silver-robed man. Yet, he seemed to be completely unaffected and even had the strength to retaliate. What's up with this low-level fiend demon? How is he completely fine? Could he be deaf? The fiend demons watching at the side were puzzled. There was no way any of them knew the vigor of Su Zimo's blood chi after he had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Even the primordial 9 races can't match him. A sound secret skill of that level posed no threat to him at all. Swoosh. With a single throw, Su Zimo suppressed everything. A strong wind howled. You. A suffocating air current surged into the silver-robed man's mouth and his howl was interrupted, allowing him to utter only a single word. The silver-robed man's blood chi rumbled and the robes on his body exploded as the flesh on his arms expanded, revealing a pair of exquisitely muscular wings. Herg? He let out a deep breath and roared as he propped both arms upwards. Boom. There was a deafening sound. The sound of bones grinding and meat smashing echoed in a jarring manner. The silver-robed man crossed his arms and gripped Su Zimo's palm tightly. It looked like things were even between them. However, the silver-robed man's face was flushed red and he had channeled his blood chi to its limits. Green veins popped up on both his arms and his muscles intertwined like snakes coiling together. It was a frightening sight. However, Su Zimo looked significantly calmer with a normal expression. Even his breathing was unusually steady. The silver-robed man did not dare to relax. If he relaxed, Su Zimo's palm would push down and crush his head instantly. Compared to the muscular and huge arms of the silver-robed man, Su Zimo's arm looked extremely slender. His palm was fair and his fingers were long, sparkling like jade. However, that fair and slender palm was able to suppress the silver-robed man completely such that the latter could not break free at all. This was a one-sided defeat. What's the true form of this low-level fiend demon? What a strong physique. What frightening blood chi. Humph. If that woman from Thousand Snake Island were to attack, the low-level fiend demon would definitely die. Right when the demons present were surprised, an even more shocking scene unfolded. Su Zimo suppressed the silver-robed man with one hand and strode forward at the same time, extending his other hand to engulf the woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island. Get over here too. He hollered and demonic chi gushed out from his palm, blanketing everything with a deafening explosion. All the demons were confounded. None of them expected Su Zimo to have strength left to take the initiative and attack the woman in makeup in such an overwhelming manner while he was suppressing the silver-robed man with one hand. The woman in makeup was startled as well. She was itching to make a move to begin with but was somewhat hesitant. Given the situation now, she no longer had a choice. She had to attack. Humph. The woman in makeup scoffed coldly and extended her tender hands, punching towards Su Zimo's palm. Thousand Snake Island specialized in poison and her blood chi and physique could not be compared to the young master of Levitating Goat Peak or the silver-robed man. The demons present could not understand why the woman in makeup was making use of her lesser capabilities. However, right before her fist was about to collide with Su Zimo's palm, something changed. Two curved sharp objects protruded from the woman in makeup's finger gaps. They looked like poisoned tooths that shone with a creepy green glow. Since you're so confident, let me teach you a lesson. A cold glint shimmered through the woman in makeup's eyes as she revealed a venomous smile. The two poisoned tooths between her fingers were her destiny dermic weapons. Even if a pure-blooded ferocious beast was pricked by the toxic poison on them, they would be doomed. She believed that she could kill low-level fiend demons with absolute ease using her poison. At the same time, the silver-robed man caught sight of this and seized the opportunity to retaliate as well. Ah! The silver-robed man roared in anger and his face flushed purple as he channeled every single bit of his power of blood chi into his arms before pushing upwards. Unknowingly, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak had gotten up. Although his cheek was swollen, his combat strength was still present. He seized advantage of the situation and charged over with a bitter cold gaze as well. To the demons present, the powerful counterattack from the three fiend demons meant that Su Zimo was now in immense danger. The tide seemed to have reversed. On the battlefield, Su Zimo's gaze shone brightly when he sensed the counterattack of the silver-robed man. He exerted strength in his palm and scoffed coldly. Kneel. Instantly, the silver-robed man's counterattack was resolved and with a thud, he was pushed down by Su Zimo's palm and knelt on the ground. The demons present were horrified. This demon still had strength remaining. Su Zimo seemed like he had sensed the danger from the other side a long time ago. Clang. Clang. He flicked out two fingernails that were as sharp as daggers from his hand. Curving his fingers slightly, Su Zimo gave a gentle flick and struck the two poison toots of the woman in makeup. Clang. The two poison toots were repelled by Su Zimo's nails. The woman in makeup was stunned and burst in retreat. Right then, the young master of levitating Goat Peak had advanced murderously with his swollen cheek. Su Zimo glanced askance with a lightning gaze. The young master of levitating Goat Peak felt his heart skip a beat and his fervor was significantly reduced. He was so frightened that he backed off a few steps in retreat and did not dare to make a move. Chapter 850 Killing Intent of the Overlord. Chapter 850 Killing Intent of the Overlord. The woman in makeup had a grim expression and did not dare to approach recklessly after her retreat. Her destiny-dermic weapon was sent flying by Su Zimo using the strength of his finger. His frightening strength made her extremely wary. The silver-robed man propped up Su Zimo's palm with both arms and had already exerted all of his strength. However, the palm would not budge at all. It was as though the legendary Mount Meru of Buddhism was crushing him from above such that he did not even have a chance to struggle. Right now, the only move he could use was the Essence Spirit secret skill of the Silver Moon Wolf race. However, he did not dare to do it. He was right beneath Su Zimo's palm. Although an Essence Spirit secret skill was swift, Su Zimo could crush his Essence Spirit with a single thought as well. He did not dare to take that gambit. The young master of levitating Goat Peak retreated a few steps back with a dark gaze. He was cursing in his heart a long time ago. He had never imagined that the silver-robed man and woman in makeup would be defeated so quickly. By the time he closed in, it would become a standoff between him and that low-level fiend demon. Everything had happened too quickly and rendered his previous plans worthless. Furthermore, Su Zimo's aura was too powerful right now and his gaze was frighteningly unfathomable. The young master of levitating Goat Peak was so rattled that he stumbled a few steps back and froze on the stop, unsure if he should advance or retreat. Fuck. The young master of levitating Goat Peak has been scared off. This low-level fiend demon shouldn't be a nobody given his frightening combat strength. How come I've never heard of him before? The three of them were defeated too swiftly. Were they just empty shells? The expressions of the young master of levitating Goat Peak and the other two turned extremely terrible when they heard the discussions around them. When they came provoking, they intended to teach the territorial lords of Ape Chatter Ridge a good lesson, and it was even better if they could kill off a few of them. To think that the three of them would be suppressed by a single low-level fiend demon. Young man, aren't you going to let go yet? Unknowingly, the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley had already arrived before the demons of Ape Chatter Ridge. He was expressionless as he remarked to Su Zimo indifferently. The other 6 overlords were behind him as well. The overlords of Levitating Goat Peak and Thousand Snake Island glared at Su Zimo with an icy stare. The other overlords looked more curious and interested. The old ape stood at the side as well. The reason why he did not stop the overlord of Su Zimo and the others was because he was also worried that Su Zimo might kill the 3 of them in a fit of recklessness and cause the situation to be irreparable. Su Zimo swept his glance and understood the old ape's intentions. In truth, the thought of killing the 3 fiend demons had not crossed his mind. The reason he came this time round was to cultivate in the Blood Sea. He had no deep feud with the other parties and there was no reason for him to provoke 3 overlords just because of the provocation of 3 fiend demons. Su Zimo retracted his palm and cupped his fists politely to the few overlords before him. He had a calm expression and was neither servile nor overbearing. To be fair, it was rare for mid or even high-level fiend demons to be this composed under the watch of 7 overlords, let alone a low-level fiend demon. The fiend demons behind Su Zimo had strikingly different reactions compared to him. All of them shuddered in fear in the face of 7 overlords as they lowered their heads, not daring to meet the overlords' gazes. Very good, you are very good. The overlord of Silvermoon Valley nodded as a mysterious glint flickered through his eyes. The overlord of Thousand Snake Island laughed as well and said coyly, "Young man, you've only cultivated for slightly more than 100 years and you're already at that level. That does make my heart pound a little. Bastard, prepare to die." The silver-robed man stood up and heaved a deep breath. Finally, he could not withstand it anymore and a silver moon shone from his glabella as he prepared to launch a sudden lethal attack. Naturally, the overlord of Silvermoon Valley's presence was what gave him confidence to attack. Piak. A crisp sound echoed from the silver-robed man's face. He had just regained consciousness when he was slapped. The silver-robed man was stumped. The demons present were dumbfounded as well. The person that slapped the silver-robed man was the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Get the hell back. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley berated and glared at the silver-robed man sternly. The silver-robed man was indignant and grit his teeth in anger. He glared at Su Zimo hatefully and decided that the latter was fully accountable for his humiliation. Everyone, I failed to discipline him properly and have allowed all of you to witness a joke. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley remarked indifferently. The old ape was expressionless and said nothing. His eyes were half closed like an old monk in meditation. You're not getting back yet? Are you waiting for a slap too? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak glanced at the young master and turned to leave. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak could only endure the humiliation and tag along. Instantly the overlords dispersed. The conflict came to an end. All the demons shook their heads in shock, feeling that this was not the end of things. Su Zimo gazed at the back view of the departing overlords with a shimmering gaze and a pensive expression. Overlord, why did you stop me? Given my... The moment they arrived at Silvermoon Valley's faction, the silver-robed man sent a voice transmission hurriedly. Idiot. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley interrupted and berated him. Do you think the old ape is blind? How are you going to succeed in your attack in front of his face? The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley had a blackened expression that was filled with killing intent upon his return. He was merely slightly troubled when Su Zimo suppressed the number 1 Territorial Lord of Silvermoon Valley. However, the moment Su Zimo stood off against the 7 Overlords, his killing intent surfaced completely. The combat strength of that low-level fiend demon was so powerful. Furthermore, he was already this composed after cultivating for slightly more than 100 years. Who could stop him in the future if he was allowed to continue cultivating? With this demon, it was not impossible for Ape Chatter Ridge to destroy the other 6 territories in the future and reign over Thousand Demon Valley single-handedly. Overlord, what are your intentions? The silver-robed man inquired warily. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley sneered and glared in the direction of Levitating Goat Peak and Thousand Snake Island. Those few old fogies may look as though they're not bothered. However, I'm guessing that I'm not the only one who wants to kill that demon. We'll wait for a chance to get rid of him. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley narrowed his gaze in deep thoughts. After a moment of silence, as though he thought of something, the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley sent a voice transmission. Remember, make use of your Essence Spirit secret skill right away the next time you attack. Don't bother with dermic arts against that demon. Also, more than that, remember that you must not engage him in melee combat. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley rubbed his chin and murmured with a grim expression. I've yet to see the true form of that demon. His background must be powerful. At the same time, the overlords of the other territories looked as though they were resting with closed eyes. In reality, all of them were conversing with their territorial lords using their spirit consciousnesses. At the front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction. Mo, be careful. The old ape suddenly sent a voice transmission. What you did was as good as disrespecting the 3 overlords. Given their vengeful nature, it's likely that they will plan something in the future. From today on, stay close to me. Noted, thank you, Senior. Su Zimo nodded. Although the overlords of Silvermoon Valley and the other territories hid it well, Su Zimo had already sensed it the moment their killing intents were triggered. The old ape continued, however, you don't have to be overly worried either. With me around, they don't dare to be reckless in front of everybody. Chapter 851 Gambit. Chapter 851, Gambit. In the following days, under the fervent suggestion of the overlords of Silvermoon Valley, Levitating Goat Peak and Thousand Snake Island, the demons brought their celebrations forward and drank merrily all the way till dawn. The 1,000 demon meet proceeded as usual. However, the fight for the spots for the Blood Sea was pushed back. The other overlords and the old ape did not object to that. Everyone could tell what the 3 overlords were up to, but nobody exposed them. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak, the silver-robed man and the woman in makeup were all severely injured in Su Zimo's hands and had to take a while to recover no matter what. The old ape guarded the faction no matter what during the 3 days. Su Zimo did not leave either. During this period of time, incredibly resplendent glows should shine from the depths of the forest from time to time. Some fiend demons said that a rare treasure was born there. Some of the fiend demons that returned even said that there seemed to be an ancient ruin that attracted many fiend demons. However, Suzimo was not moved by anything. He stopped the monkey, the spirit tiger and everyone else from leaving the old ape's side as well. During the 3 days, Suzimo could clearly sense some gazes with malicious intents glaring at him from a hidden corner constantly. If he had truly left the old ape's side, there was a chance that he might walk into an elaborate setup made for him. 3 days later. The 7 overlords announced at the same time the official commencement of the fight for the spots to cultivate in the Blood Sea. The first trial was simple. With the 1,000-year Blood Sea at the center, there were a few Blood Sea badges made of superior class mystic metal hidden in the radius of 250 to 500 kilometers. There were a total of 500 tablets. The Blood Sea badges could be placed on the ground, buried in the mud or hidden within some caves. The fiend demons taking part in this trial merely had to locate a single one of those badges. This was a trial that could eliminate most of the fiend demons. This was because although there were 500 Blood Sea badges, only the first 100 fiend demons that found the badges were qualified to compete for the final 10 spots. More than 100 territorial lords stood out respectively from Levitating Goat Peak, Silver Moon Valley, Thousand Snake Island, Vermilion Cloud Valley, Confusion Mist Swamp and Golden Flames Mountain. The opportunity to cultivate in the Blood Sea was rare and everyone wanted to give it a shot. If they were lucky, there was a chance for them to get into the final trial. As for Ape Chatter Ridge, there were only less than 20 fiend demons that took part, Suzimo and Solitary Cloud included. Are you sure you can pass this trial? The old ape was still unconvinced and could not help but drag Suzimo away and ask again. The maximum range of a low-level fiend demon's essence spirit was 50 kilometers. It was truly hard for him to imagine that Suzimo's spirit consciousness could extend beyond 250 kilometers. Suzimo smiled faintly. I can give it a shot. Go on. The old ape nodded. Suzimo and the others arrived one after another beside the Blood Sea enthusiastically. That demon Mo is here too. Isn't he a low-level fiend demon? Suzimo's name had long spread through the entire 1,000 demon meet during the past 3 days. He's probably here to join the crowd. Humph, it's true that he's strong in combat. However, he's only looking to be humiliated if he partakes in something like this blindly. Many fiend demons discussed softly. My. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak smirked coldly the moment he caught sight of Suzimo and said in an odd manner, "What's a low-level fiend demon doing here? He's probably here to cushion the base." Ha ha ha. The demons of Levitating Goat Peak roared in laughter. Suzimo had a calm expression as he glanced askance at the young master of Levitating Goat Peak. You think that I won't be able to get a Blood Sea badge? A low-level fiend demon dreaming of getting his hands on the Blood Sea badge? You are truly the biggest joke in the world. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak used this rare chance to mock Suzimo cruelly for the humiliation he suffered 3 days ago as he laughed loudly. How far can your spirit consciousness extend? 10 kilometers? 15? Let me tell you, the Blood Sea badges are hidden more than 250 kilometers away. Someone like you. What if I can get my hands on the Blood Sea badges? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was interrupted by Suzimo before he could even finish. What are you talking about? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak shouted as though he had heard the greatest joke in the world. I'll eat up any Blood Sea badge that you get. Ha! Suzimo smirked with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Initially he was truly disinterested in this first trial. However, he was moved when he heard what the young master of Levitating Goat Peak said. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak pressured him with a provocative look. Mo, do you dare to take on a Gambit? What are we betting on? Suzimo asked. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak declared loudly, we'll bet on whether you can get your hands on the Blood Sea badges. This? Suzimo mulled in silence as though he was put in a difficult position. When the young master of Levitating Goat Peak saw that, he was even more certain and continued mocking, if you don't dare to make the Gambit, scram. Don't embarrass yourself here. That's right. Head back. What's a low-level fiend demon doing here? The demons of Levitating Goat Peak chimed in hurriedly. All right, I'll take you on. Suzimo's face flushed red, as though he was worked up and agreed in a moment of recklessness. A gentleman must not renege on his words. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak added hurriedly, worried that Su Zimo might regret his decision. He scanned the surroundings and declared to more than 1,000 fiend demons around the Blood Sea. Everyone listen up. I'm having a gambit with Mo. I'll eat up any Blood Sea badge that he gets. So, what happens if you can't get any? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak turned to Su Zimo and asked smugly. I'll leave that to you if I can't get my hands on any. Su Zimo reverted to his nonchalant expression and shrugged his shoulders gently. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak froze momentarily. He suddenly felt uneasy when he caught sight of Su Zimo's expression. However, on second thought, he knew that this gambit was definitely in the bag for him. Even if he lost, what's the deal with eating a Blood Sea badge? Although the Blood Sea badge was made using superior class mystic metals and was hard to digest, it did not matter even if he ate it. All he had to do was excrete it later on. Furthermore, how could he lose? At that thought, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak nodded confidently. If you lose, you'll kneel before me in front of everyone and let me ride on you for 3 rounds around the Blood Sea. All right. Su Zimo nodded in agreement. That could be considered as an extreme humiliation. No matter what, the gambit seemed unfair. However, the demons merely thought that Su Zimo had gone insane and lost all sense of reason for accepting it. Mo is too young and has only cultivated for such a short time. It's no wonder why he's so impetuous and was fooled easily with a few words of provocations. Fufu, the reputation he gained is about to be destroyed instantly. Some of the fiend demons smirked coldly. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak suddenly said, I dare to make a vow that if I regret my words, I'll definitely face difficulties advancing in my cultivation in the future and will die of a calamity. Vows were extremely mysterious. It was fine if somebody did not make a vow. However, for all cultivators of all races, none of them dared to renege on a vow. Even emperors were not spared from the shackles of a vow. The demons present were shocked. A vow would lead both parties to reach an irreversible situation. Su Zimo smiled gently and made the vow soon after as well. The gambit between both parties was established. Chapter 852, Background Check. Chapter 852, Background Check. Naturally, the 7 overlords witnessed the gambit between Su Zimo and the young master of Levitating Goat Peak. Although all 7 of them had their own thoughts about it, none of them interfered. To be fair, even the old ape did not favor Su Zimo for this gambit. However, he believed that Su Zimo naturally had a way of dealing with it. The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak had lived for several thousand years and believed in his judgment. There was no way Su Zimo could win this gambit. Furthermore, even if there were any unexpected changes and Su Zimo won, it was no big deal. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak merely had to eat a Blood Sea badge. The other overlords had their own thoughts as well. The overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp said, this demon's combat strength is outstanding. However, he's truly impudent to think that he can get a spot to cultivate within the Blood Sea as a low-level fiend demon. Who knows? He might have something up his sleeve since he's so firm. The overlord of Thousand Snake Island smirked coldly. Suddenly, the voice of Silvermoon Valley's overlord sounded within the consciousnesses of the overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Thousand Snake Island and Vermilion Cloud Valley. I'm not concerned about that, I just want to know what's the true form of this demon. By taking part in this first trial, this demon definitely has to unlock his consciousness and release his spirit consciousness. That will give us a good chance to probe. The gazes of the few overlords landed on the overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley at the same time. At that moment, the overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley laid within his carriage with his huge belly propped up. He was merrymaking and looked like a useless bum. However, the few overlords knew that among the 7 of them, this fatty was the best at probing. Although the overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley behaved as usual and continued merrymaking with the women around him, his voice echoed in the minds of the few overlords, everyone don't worry. When that demon releases his spirit consciousness, I'll definitely be able to uncover his background. The few overlords were conversing with their spirit consciousnesses and outsiders naturally could not hear it. The old ape sat quietly on the spot and his eyes opened slightly with a cold glint. As though he sensed something, his white brows fluttered gently. Beside the Blood Sea. More than 1,000 fiend demons were prepared and raring to go. The young master of levitating Goat Peak was filled with confidence as he looked at Su Zimo with a provocative expression. Su Zimo smiled calmly. He was naturally confident since he dared to take on the Gambit. He had cultivated 2 legendary essence spirits. Furthermore, the range of his essence spirit's spirit consciousness could already extend to 50 kilometers the moment he advanced to the nascent soul realm. Now that Su Zimo was at the peak of mid-stage nascent soul realm, the range of both his scarlet-haired Yin spirit and black-haired essence spirit could now extend more than 250 kilometers. He could probably extend to 500 kilometers if his essence spirits were combined. For Su Zimo, clearing the first trial was extremely simple. Prepare, go. With that order, spirit consciousnesses were released one after another around the Blood Sea and extended far into the distance. One did not only have to locate a Blood Sea badge to pass the first trial, they had to be the fastest to do so. Although there were 500 Blood Sea badges, only the first 100 fiend demons that located them were qualified for the final trial. Swoosh! Su Zimo's spirit consciousness was released as well. Instantly, countless gazes were fixed on Su Zimo. All of them wanted to see how far his spirit consciousness could extend. 5 kilometers. 25 kilometers. In the blink of an eye, he was 50 kilometers out. The demons were alarmed. 50 kilometers was theoretically the limit of a low-level fiend demon's spirit consciousness. However, in reality, not many low-level fiend demons could reach that range. Most of them would be deemed exceptional prodigies if they could even reach a range of 40 to 45 kilometers. However, Su Zimo was already at 50 kilometers in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, it seemed like he was about to break the 50 kilometers barrier soon. He's really strong. It's no wonder why he dared to take on the Gambit. He's truly a rare talent found only every 10,000 years. Even if he can extend beyond 50 kilometers, so what? The Blood Sea badges are only available beyond 250 kilometers, he is still way too far from that. Furthermore, his cultivation realm is clear to all. His spirit consciousness is only going to weaken the further he extends it. The voice of the fiend demon softened until he could no longer speak. That was because he noticed that even after 50 kilometers, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness showed no signs of slowing down and had even surpassed most of the fiend demons. This demon is truly... The demons present watched with widened eyes, unable to speak any longer. Right in front of the demons, Su Zimo was at the 100 kilometers range before long. His spirit consciousness showed no signs of weakness and was far in the lead. The expression of the young master of levitating Goat Peak turned grim. The moment Su Zimo's spirit consciousness was released, the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley who was initially merrymaking tossed away his cup of wine. His eyes widened and his eyeballs bulged in a sinister manner as though they were going to pop out of his sockets. A resplendent glow filled his eyeballs. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley's gaze traversed through the voids and delved into Su Zimo's consciousness instantly. How is it? The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley frowned and asked with a voice transmission. The Overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp sent voice transmissions as well. All of them tried to probe but to no avail. It seemed as though there was an invisible barrier around Mo that could block their senses. Strange. A moment later, the resplendent glow on the eyeballs of the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley dissipated and his eyeballs went back to normal as he murmured. What's wrong? The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley blurted out with his voice, no longer bothered to use a voice transmission. The old ape and Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain turned around. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley frowned slightly and said in a slow manner, "The true form of that demon is a human." The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's gaze turned cold as he spoke with an icy killing intent. He is a human cultivator? If he's a human cultivator, we have to kill him on the spot. The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island added. Chi. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain sneered, "Are the two of you deaf?" He just said it himself. That demon. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley waved it off. The way he worded it doesn't matter. What kind of a demon has the true form of a human? He's definitely a human cultivator. You want to accuse him of being a human and murder him? The old ape opened his eyes expressionlessly and said in an idle manner, "Aren't you being too obvious with your intentions?" He is not a human cultivator. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley shook his head as well. I can sense a rich demonic chi in his essence spirit. That's definitely not the essence spirit of a human cultivator. Indeed, the overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silver Moon Valley and Thousand Snake Island wanted to use the fact that Su Zimo was a human cultivator as a legitimate reason to kill the latter. However, they could not do anything about it after the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley's remark. Moreover, the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley wanted to speak but stopped. What more? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak pressed on. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley said darkly, moreover, there seems to be some scales on his human form essence spirit that can't be seen clearly. Scales? The few overlords frowned. The old ape replied indifferently, don't forget the roots of our demon race. Back in the primordial era, it was extremely common to see human-shaped living beings in the barren lands as well. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain nodded. That makes sense. He must have inherited the bloodline of a living being from the primordial era. That's probably the only reason why he possesses such immense potential. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley was about to continue speaking when a shriek sounded from the side. Hurry, look. He's gone beyond 250 kilometers. Everyone's heart skipped a beat and they turned over. The gaze of the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley shimmered for a moment and he did not continue speaking. There was something that he did not add on. The scales on that human form living being did not resemble the scales of an ordinary demon beast. Chapter 853 Truly Savage. Chapter 853, Truly Savage. 250 kilometers. Most mid-level fiend demons could not even reach that range. But now, at the 1,000 demon meet, there was a low-level fiend demon whose spirit consciousness could extend beyond 250 kilometers. Furthermore, it was still extending. The demons were no longer surprised, they were shocked. This is truly unimaginable. What is his true form? How is he this strong? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak is definitely going to lose this gambit. That's not for sure. The strength of a spirit consciousness will definitely weaken beyond 250 kilometers. We don't know if he can locate a Blood Sea badge yet. The logic was the same as one's eyesight. The closer something is, the clearer one will be able to see it. The further, the blurrier, and it would also be comparatively harder to locate something. 4 fiend demons that took part in the first trial, their spirit consciousnesses could naturally extend beyond 250 kilometers. Otherwise, there would be no need for them to waste their time participating. However, more than half of them found that their senses were extremely dull beyond 250 kilometers. They could not even sense what was beyond 250 kilometers, let alone locate something. Although this trial seemed simple, there were actually 2 aspects being tested. First was the range of one's spirit consciousness. Second, it was testing the refinement of one's spirit consciousness. The more refined one's essence spirit was, the clearer they would be able to sense the surroundings around their spirit consciousnesses. Su Zimo's scarlet-haired Een spirit cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness and was refined using the spirit refinement technique of the Great Desolate Dragon King. How could any demon's essence spirit be more refined than his? Even his black-haired essence spirit was refined using 2 heaven-grade cultivation techniques of the immortal and Buddhist Taoists. With the help of the creation green lotus, it was pure and refined and could be compared to the scarlet-haired Een spirit as well. That was the reason why Su Zimo could still sense the surroundings and even the temperature and wind with his spirit consciousness clearly even after 250 kilometers. Everything it saw was reflected within his mind. He could even sense the ants and worms crawling in the mud. Su Zimo was in no rush. With his spirit consciousness, he could even uncover Blood Sea badges that were buried 3 feet beneath the ground. Right now, he was pondering about something that happened earlier. The moment he released his spirit consciousness, he could clearly sense a powerful gaze penetrating the barrier of the Mingwang prayer beads into his consciousness. That alarmed him. Of course, Su Zimo had been extremely cautious after he arrived at this place and had hidden the black-haired essence spirit a long time ago. The creation lotus platform hovered in a corner and its petals were closed like a bud. The black-haired essence spirit was hidden within. That was the reason why the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley could only detect the existence of the scarlet-haired Een spirit. He did not know that there was another essence spirit within Su Zimo's consciousness. The scarlet-haired Een spirit sensed the penetration of the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley's gaze right away. As though it was triggered, the scarlet-haired Een spirit's eyes bolted open with a bright light. Instantly, scarlet dragon scales that seemed like they were blazing with flames appeared one after another on his body, and he exuded a might of a lord that looked down on the world. Demon beasts had a strong sense of territory possession. The dragon race was the most particular about that. The scarlet-haired Een spirit cultivated the spirit refinement technique of the great desolate dragon king and was no different from a dragon himself. The probe from the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley had enraged it completely. This was the might of the dragon race. It was impossible for ordinary demon beasts to resist. Although the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley cultivated a secret skill such that his gaze was able to penetrate the obstruction of the Mingwang prayer beads, his strength was weakened by the time he barged into Su Zimo's consciousness. His gaze dissipated the moment it made contact with the scarlet-haired Een spirit's gaze. That was the reason why the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley did not manage to see Su Zimo's true form at the end as well. The aura released by the scarlet-haired Een spirit alone was enough to give him shudders. To all the demons present, this was only an ordinary competition between spirit consciousnesses. However, nobody would have thought that right at the beginning, Su Zimo had already engaged in an exchange of sorts against an Overlord. The entire process was fleeting and silent, but it was extremely dangerous. Su Zimo could not guarantee that the Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley would not attack him if his black-haired essence spirit was exposed. However, he knew that the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley and the others would definitely not let him off. Ah, I found it. Right then, the laughter of a fiend demon interrupted Su Zimo's thoughts. It was a fiend demon from Golden Flames Mountain. His spirit consciousness had just extended beyond 250 kilometers when he located a Blood Sea badge on a grass plain. Apart from the refinement level of one's essence spirit, luck was also involved as to whether one could locate a Blood Sea badge. Some of the Blood Sea badges were located on the surface, casually tossed on grass plains or atop rocks. Some of the Blood Sea badges were hidden deeper. That was the reason why it was harder to locate Blood Sea badges the longer things dragged. After all, most fiend demons would locate the Blood Sea badges that were placed on the surfaces. The expression of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak turned grim. He was already brooding the moment he sensed Su Zimo's spirit consciousness extending beyond 250 kilometers. It was likely that he had lost this gambit. However, he felt that it was not a wrongful defeat. Who could have expected a low-level fiend demon's spirit consciousness to extend to such a frightening range? If I lose, so be it. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak scoffed coldly in his mind. All I have to do is eat a Blood Sea badge, it doesn't matter. Before long, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak located a Blood Sea badge on a tree branch. His spirit consciousness latched onto the badge and reined it in swiftly. During this short period of time, almost half of the fiend demons have located Blood Sea badges. The fiend demons were extremely excited. After he reined his spirit consciousness in, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak swept his gaze around. He saw a Blood Sea badge in Su Zimo's hand. The latter was even faster than him. It was clear that he had lost this gambit. Interesting, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak has to eat that badge now. Fufu, I wonder what a Blood Sea badge tastes like. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak harumphed coldly with an ashen expression when he heard the discussions. Amo, this is your victory. He had a dark gaze as he glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, but wait and see. After he said that, he noticed that Su Zimo's eyes were still closed. The latter seemed to be in deep thought and had not heard him. Humph, what are you acting for? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak pouted his lips. Stop giving off the pretense of wisdom. Right then, a few more fiend demons found Blood Sea badges. However, they had strange expressions when they recalled their spirit consciousnesses. All of them turned to look at Su Zimo, who was silent at the side with shocked expressions. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak had recalled his spirit consciousness a long time ago after locating a Blood Sea badge and naturally could not sense it. However, their spirit consciousnesses could clearly sense an extremely powerful spirit consciousness searching wildly beyond 250 kilometers. It was sweeping through all the Blood Sea badges beyond 250 kilometers. Be it those buried underground or hidden within tree trunks, this spirit consciousness found and collected them before continuing to search. By the time those fiend demons recalled their spirit consciousnesses, that powerful spirit consciousness had already collected more than 100 Blood Sea badges. What is Mo trying to do? The fiend demons were dumbfounded. They sneaked a glance at the young master of Levitating Goat Peak, and a possibility crossed their minds, but they could not believe it. At the front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction, Yuan Linger's spirit consciousness moved, and she was stupefied when she caught sight of that. Before long, as though she thought of something, Yuan Linger let out a stifled chuckle. What's wrong? Monkey and the others could not see what was happening beyond 250 kilometers with their spirit consciousnesses and could not help but ask. That young master is in for it now. Yuan Linger controlled her amusement and replied, how should I put it, your first is truly savage. Chapter 854, More Than Enough. Chapter 854, More Than Enough. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak noticed that the atmosphere around him seemed odd. Many fiend demons looked at him with pitiable and gloating gazes. What was the big deal about eating a Blood Sea badge? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak frowned slightly and thought to himself. Right then, the 100th fiend demon obtained a Blood Sea badge, and the Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain rose to declare loudly, the first trial has ended. The remaining fiend demons recalled their spirit consciousnesses and shook their heads in disappointment. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak thought that he would not get into huge trouble after losing the Gambit. At the most, he would just be embarrassed and have to eat a badge. At that thought, he regained his confidence and raised his head slightly, glaring at Su Zimo with an indifferent expression. The 7 overlords arrived in the air above them. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak raised his head and was momentarily stunned. For some unknown reason, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak looked ashen and was even glaring at him fiercely. It was an extremely stern gaze that made his heart skip a beat. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak could not understand why. 3 days ago he lost miserably to Mo and was even stunned and humiliated on the spot. However, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak said nothing. Why was the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak so furious with the loss of this Gambit? The overlord of Silvermoon Valley said loudly, fiend demons that did not obtain a Blood Sea badge return first. That's a Gambit too. Suddenly, Solitary Cloud shouted from within the crowd. That's right, don't forget about the Gambit. Ah, he's going to eat a badge. The demons cheered. The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak had a grim expression. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak harumphed coldly and took the initiative to stand forward. He glanced askance at Su Zimo and hollered, Mo, I'm a man of my words and I'll accept my loss. With that, he flipped his palm and stuffed a Blood Sea badge into his mouth right in front of all the demons. Although the Blood Sea badge was not huge in size, it was made of superior class mystic metal and was difficult to swallow as well as indigestible. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak had no other choice but to revert to half his true form and revealed a gruesome goat head. He opened his mouth widely and managed to swallow the Blood Sea badge. After composing himself, he took a deep breath and returned to normal. Mo, as a fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak, my words are golden and I'll never renege on them. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak glared at Su Zimo coldly and said, however, don't get smug now. I'll remember the humiliation today and make sure you pay it back 100 times in the future. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak had thought about that statement for 3 days and felt that it was superb. Not only did it exude his aura, it also showed his anger and determination. With that said, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak swept his sleeves and turned to leave in a suave manner. Hold on. Suddenly, Su Zimo's voice sounded and he beckoned gently with his hands. Is there anything else? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak turned around and looked at Su Zimo with a raised chin. Su Zimo smiled gently. Don't be hasty, the Gambit is not over yet. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak froze momentarily. Immediately after, a pile of blood-colored objects floated over from afar. In the blink of an eye, they arrived before Su Zimo and scattered onto the ground. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak fixed his gaze and his expression froze. The pile of blood-colored objects were all Blood Sea badges. There were at least 300 that could be seen with a single glance. Cold sweat broke from the young master of Levitating Goat Peak's forehead and he could not help but gulp and stutter, What's the meaning of this? I'm just here to complete the gambit. Su Zimo replied indifferently, you've only swallowed a Blood Sea badge. However, these are the Blood Sea badges that I've scoured and located. You've got to eat them all. You. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak gripped his fists and shouted with a furious expression, I didn't say that I'll eat so many in my gambit. Huh? Su Zimo asked instead, how did you say it then? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak had a grim, guilty expression and could not reply. You said that you would eat any Blood Sea badge that I get my hands on. Su Zimo pointed to the pile of badges that resembled a small mountain. Well, let me ask you now. Are these Blood Sea badges? The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was drenched with sweat and shook his head repeatedly. His stomach churned at the sight of the badges. He almost vomited the single badge he ate earlier on. I am not eating them. The voice of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak quivered. What kind of a joke was that? It was fine if he only ate a single Blood Sea badge. However, that pile was almost like a small mountain. Who could eat all of that? Even if he could eat them up, there was no way he could digest them. Not far away, some of the fiend demons could not hold it back and burst into laughter. The laughter was infectious. All the demons roared in laughter. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was flustered and looked at the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak in midair with a pleading expression. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak grit his teeth with a frozen look on his face. His muscles twitched and his rage could be seen clearly. Young man, you should know when to forgive and forget. Finally, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak spoke and snarled word by word with an icy tone, you had better not go overboard with your bullying. Overboard? Su Zimo smiled and shook his head, asking instead, Overlord, may I ask? Who was the one that initiated the gambit? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak remained silent. Su Zimo smiled and asked again, may I ask again, Overlord? If I was the one who lost the gambit, would you guys have spared me? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak maintained his silence. There was naturally no way he would let the opportunity slip if Su Zimo had lost. Su Zimo retracted his smile slowly upon the silence of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and said indifferently, I've got a final question. There's a vow in place as well. Are you going to go against the vow, Overlord? The mouth of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak cramped up. Even a demon emperor wouldn't dare to go against a vow, let alone he who was an Overlord. The meaning of this final question was clear. He did not dare to reply at all. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak closed his eyes. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Su Zimo turned to the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and beamed brightly as he pointed to the pile of Blood Sea badges. Go on, eat. There's more than enough badges. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak was on the verge of crying. He realized that there was no way he could get out of this. This was a pit he had dug for himself. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak gave a deep roar and reverted to his true form, grabbing the Blood Sea badges and stuffing them wildly into his mouth. The demons felt their stomachs churn at the sight of that. Mo sure is bold to dare to go against an Overlord like that. He is savage as well. He didn't show any mercy at all. Humph, he's not the savage one. You guys probably didn't know about it, but I heard that Levitating Goat Peak set up a trap to encircle and kill him a few days ago, but he didn't fall for it. Hush. Keep it down. Many fiend demons discussed in private as they watched the show. The Blood Sea badges before them decreased by the moment. However, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak's face was turning green by now. He glared at Su Zimo bitterly as he devoured the Blood Sea badges, wanting nothing more than to devour Su Zimo as well. Chapter 855, 10 Men. Chapter 855, 10 Men. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak swayed with a bulging belly. With each sway, the demons around could even hear the sound of metal clanging within his belly. After he consumed the final Blood Sea badge, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak could no longer hold it in. In a flash, he sped towards the dense forest in the distance. The demons present clutched their bellies in wild laughter and the muscles on their faces even felt cramps. The fight for the final 10 spots came after the first trial. The rules for the fight were simple. The 100 fiend demons that obtained the Blood Sea badges would be divided into 10 groups and each group would compete in the arena in one-on-one fights. After the first round, the remaining 5 fiend demons in their respective arenas will move on to the next round. For the second round, 1 fiend demon would sit out for each round and the remaining 4 would engage in one-on-one fights, resulting in 2 victors. For the third round, a fiend demon would sit out and the remaining 2 fiend demons would fight with a single victor remaining. In the fourth round, 2 fiend demons would be left in each arena to fight for the eventual victors. The 10 fiend demons selected from the 10 arenas will partake in the trip to cultivate in the 1,000-year Blood Sea. The 7 Overlords soared into the air, exchanged glances and struck at almost the same time. Dermic powers surged and the weather changed. The ground on the flat plains beside the Blood Sea overturned and instantly, gigantic arenas were formed. High-level fiend demons could alter terrains just by activating their dermic powers. Before long, 10 arenas were constructed. Right then, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak flew over from far away. He staggered by the time he landed and the way he walked looked odd as well. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak moved extremely slowly with his bum twerking. Each twerk he made caused him to gasp. "What's up with him?" Little Fox asked curiously, somewhat confused. Monkey grinned. "He can't digest all the Blood Sea badges inside him, so he must have been through vomiting and diarrhea. However, it's not an easy task to poop out so many badges," the spirit tiger added. "You. Disgusting." Little Fox made a retching gesture. The spirit tiger snickered evilly. "Look at the way he's walking. He must have had diarrhea for a long time." "How are you?" the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak asked with a frown. "I'm fine. I can still fight." The young master of Levitating Goat Peak realized his voice was hoarse when he spoke. The demons sneaked glances over. Everyone could tell that even if the young master of Levitating Goat Peak was not severely injured from eating the Blood Sea badges, he must have been tormented badly. It did not take long before the 10 groups were assigned. On paper, the groupings were done randomly. However, the 7 overlords had a tacit understanding and separated their strongest underlings from the other parties to avoid an internecine outcome. For example, in Suzimo's group, apart from him, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak, the silver-robed man of Silvermoon Valley and the woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island were all missing. It seemed like the overlords were wary towards Suzimo's strength as well. Let the fight officially begin. Before long, the fights on the 10 arenas took place at the same time. For the first round, Suzimo's opponent was a bull demon from Golden Flames Mountain. "Brother Imo, I saw you in action 3 days ago. I'm most likely not your match in terms of strength." The bull demon greeted with cupped fists. "However, the opportunity to cultivate within the Blood Sea is rare. I can't just give up without a fight and will still try my best. Let's go." Golden Flames Mountain had always been on good terms with Ape Chatter Ridge and the bull demon did not show any signs of hostility at all. "Brother Bull, let's go." Suzimo greeted with cupped fists and raised his head with a gentle smile as well. There were not many rules to the trial, but Essence Spirit fights were barred. First, the Essence Spirit was already tested during the first trial. Second, Essence Spirit fights were way too dangerous. In the past, elite fiend demons of 2 territories fought in a death match with their Essence Spirits and resulted in an internecine outcome. In the end, neither of the fiend demons managed to survive and both perished. Bang! Boom! Boom! The bull demon reverted to his true form and his body blazed with golden flames in a grand manner. He charged towards Suzimo and his hooves sounded like thunder. This bull demon of Golden Flames Mountain had a strong physique to begin with. Coupled with the golden flames burning on his body, he was extremely strong. Although he seemed submissive in his statement, there was a hint of indignance in his heart. After all, he was a mid-level fiend demon. He knew that he had a major cultivation realm advantage and wanted to challenge Suzimo's physique. Suzimo did not move a single inch. He only extended his palm slowly when the bull demon charged to the front and pushed against the latter's head in a seemingly gentle manner. Piak! His palm pressed down. The bull demon's momentum came to an abrupt stop. The bull demon's eyes widened in disbelief as he glared at the seemingly frail figure before him. To be able to stop his gigantic charging body just like that, this man's strength was definitely multiple times of his. Furthermore, Suzimo had blocked it in an extremely casual manner. He pushed back the bull demon with absolute ease. Even more frightening than that, the blazing golden flames on the bull demon's body were extinguished against Suzimo's palm push. Not only that, the golden flames around Su Zimo's palm extinguished in retreat continuously as well, as though they sensed something terrifying. The bull demon was incredibly surprised. Su Zimo froze momentarily as well before coming to a realization. The palm he extended was the palm with the divine phoenix bone. No matter how strong the flames of the bull demon were, they could not compare to the flames of the divine phoenix. Su Zimo retracted his palm. The bull demon did not continue attacking and merely slumped his head slightly as he retreated, acknowledging his defeat. Before long, the first round was over and 50 fiend demons were eliminated. Unsurprisingly, the young master of levitating Goat Peak, the silver-robed man and woman in makeup, made it to the second round. Solitary Cloud defeated his opponent and advanced smoothly as well. Su Zimo managed to subdue his opponent effortlessly during the second round as well. During the third round, Su Zimo was left out. In the fourth round, his arena was only left with him and a fiend demon of Vermilion Cloud Valley. The fiend demon reverted to his true form as a toad and glared with jade-green eyes. He did not dare to charge recklessly and released a dermic art instead. A sticky green ball of liquid flew through the air. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. The water ball was not only formed with dermic powers, there was poison in it as well. However, poison of that level could not hurt Su Zimo. Su Zimo's blood chi rumbled and he burst the water ball with a casual slap. He took a step forward and appeared before the toad in the blink of an eye. Buzz. All of a sudden, the toad's eyes suddenly bulged out and rays of resplendent light spewed forth. Visual technique. The azure-eye toad was a pure-blooded ferocious beast and visual techniques were one of their ultimate killing moves as well. Unfortunately, he was dealing against Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not resist and merely closed his eyes. The resplendent lights spilled onto his body but did not even manage to penetrate his body's defenses. Your visual technique lacks some firepower. Su Zimo smiled gently and waved his robes. He flipped the gigantic toad and tossed it beneath the arena. Finally, Su Zimo stood victorious and obtained one of the spots to cultivate in the Blood Sea. The 7 overlords were expressionless. All 7 of them had expected this. Not long later, the results of the other 9 arenas were determined. Apart from the young master with a belly full of badges, another territorial lord of levitating Goat Peak obtained the chance to cultivate. 2 fiend demons from Silvermoon Valley and Vermilion Cloud Valley respectively obtained the chances as well. Golden Flames Mountain, Confusion Mist Swamp, Thousand Snake Island and Ape Chatter Ridge merely managed a single fiend demon each. Unfortunately, Solitary Cloud lost at the last fight and did not manage to obtain a spot. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.